Good evening. This is Lori Charlton. It's March 6th, 2025. I want to welcome everyone to the first Board of Finance budget hearing for the fiscal 25-26 budget. I'll call the meeting to order and ask that we please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To the members of the public, this is the first in a series of Board of Finance budget hearings that will continue throughout March and culminate with this board voting on April 2nd on a recommended budget to send to the RTM for their deliberations and vote. From start to finish, there are 8 hearings scheduled prior to the vote. That includes 5 sessions to hear departments present their budgets, including tonight, 2 sessions held in reserve without an agenda at this point for the board to address follow-up questions or any new information that comes to light, and a public budget hearing on March 29th. The departments and topics to be covered in each hearing will be included on each posted agenda and are also available in advance on a schedule that can be accessed through the homepage of the town website, along with the budget book we'll be referring to throughout our deliberations. We encourage community participation in the process and will provide multiple ways for residents to engage. First, residents are always encouraged to send comments and questions in writing to the board via the link on the Board of Finance page on the town website. In addition, at each hearing, we'll provide a forum for live public comment that's pertinent to the budget topics on that evening's agenda. Live comment can be provided whether members of the public attend the hearing in person or via Zoom. Either way, we'll open up for comments following the board's deliberations, and we ask that they be limited to 3 minutes per person. Public comment is a time for residents to make a statement for the board to consider, but it is not an interactive Q&A format. If residents have questions or want to have a discussion on any particular item, please use the link on the town website to reach out to the board members in writing. And lastly, as previously mentioned, we will be holding a public hearing on Saturday morning, March 29th at Ward High School. That is another opportunity for residents to have their voices heard on any aspect of the budget or the budget as a whole for the board votes. So before we move on to item 3, I want to thank the first selectman, the superintendent, our chief fiscal officer and chief operations officer, our interim budget director, the finance departments of both the town and Fairfield Public Schools, and their entire teams for the work that went into preparing this budget. I also want to acknowledge the members of the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen for the work they did, vetting and adjusting the budget that comes before us tonight. Typically, in opening these hearings, the chair will make a statement about our board's role in the budget process. And just reflecting on some of what we've heard from the community thus far, I thought it might be helpful to maybe say a few words. First, I want to sincerely thank every resident who's already reached out to our board. I have personally not been able to respond to every email, but I've read every one. I'm sure I can say the same for my colleagues. Please be assured we take your feedback and concerns seriously. Secondly, I want to thank every member of the public who stays engaged in this process. And God bless whoever's willing to listen to all these meetings. I do acknowledge there are a lot of concerns about the budget. We have heard from residents who are concerned about services and are advocating for more investment, particularly in our schools. We've heard from other residents who are deeply concerned about taxes and affordability and literally their ability to continue to live in the community. It's not easy to strike a perfect balance, but in reflecting on some of the feedback we've gotten and the requests for budget restorations or budget cuts, I would just ask for the community's patience as we vet this budget. And also ask everyone to just be cognizant that these budget decisions are not black and white. And so what do I mean by that? Well, in short, everyone can probably appreciate that budgets are compiled with imperfect information. The officials that put the budget together know that better than anyone. Every year, new information comes to our attention during the hearing process, and as a result of that, changes get incorporated to the budget as we go along. But by the time we vote, our information is still imperfect, and the budget includes numerous assumptions, judgments, and sometimes educated guesses based on history or other information. And I could say this about any area of the budget, but let me take our school budget as just one example. Most of us know that teacher salaries are contractually determined, but the number of teachers is not. When the budget's constructed, student enrollment is an estimate, and therefore the number of classroom sections and teachers required is an estimate. The number of students who may require specialized services and the nature and cost of the services they might need is an estimate. Our ability to serve those students in district versus the need to outplace students and the resulting cost differential of outplacement tuition is an estimate. The number of teachers who will retire and be replaced by younger teachers at a different salary grade is an estimate. Healthcare costs for employees are based on state rates, but costs can be substantially impacted by turnover, by the mix of employees, and by changes in status that impact whether employees require single or family healthcare insurance coverage. That is an estimate. Utility costs for our buildings can vary dramatically based on weather and other things like snow removal. Those costs are estimates. State funding is not finalized, and any flow-through impact of policy changes at the federal level is unknown. Those numbers are estimates. I can go on, but I think everyone gets the picture. The reason I put emphasis on this is that the impact of these estimates is not immaterial. We've seen multi-million-dollar swings in budget line items every year. One of the more dramatic examples of this was in fiscal 23, when the Board of Selectmen approved a $2.5 million cut to the Board of Ed's requested budget. There's a lot of concern from the community and fear that the cut would impact programming. This board restored the $2.5 million cut, but then by year end, we ended up with a $4 million surplus. Now, of course, every year is impacted by unique factors, but some version of this in some degree happens every year. And there are lessons to be learned from that. The lesson is not that anyone did anything wrong or with bad intent. Part of it is the nature of the process, but part of it underscores the fact that the budget is not simply a bunch of fixed costs and contractual obligations. The devil is in the details. And that underscores the need for this board to do our due diligence and ensure we're asking the right questions, including understanding the discrepancies we've had in the past, and using those learnings to challenge the assumptions and estimates that underlie the budget. That is a key element of our role. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in the administration in the weeks ahead to pursue our shared goal of a fiscally responsible budget that serves the needs of all our residents. And again, we very much welcome input from the community. Tonight, we'll kick off the meeting by hearing a summary of the budget from the first selectman and offer the board the opportunity to ask any high-level questions on his presentation. From there, we'll open up to public comment and then hear directly from the departments listed in tonight's agenda. Any member of the public wishing to provide comment via Zoom, please go ahead and insert your name and address into the chat box now or at any time before item 4 is introduced and indicate you'd like to be heard. Okay, so with that, we'll move to item 3, which is the summary budget presentation. First Selectman Gerber, welcome. I will turn this over to you.
Congratulations.
What's that? Oh, yes. Congratulations to our colleague, Ms. LeClaire, who became a grandmother. Yesterday or today, was it?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Congratulations, Mary.
Congratulations, Mary.
Very exciting. All right, Mr. Gerber, you can go ahead.
Okay, so if anyone saw my RTM proposal, budget presentation, not really completely appropriate for this level of sophistication regarding finance for this group. So many of those slides have been taken out, replaced by a couple others. But I'd like to start with one. You can, not being shared. There we go. Can you see?
Yeah. There you go. It's on now.
But the presentation was going to be handed out. But John
John,
had asked for it and it was stated that it would be handed out.
well, it can be handed out, but it's not typical to hand out this presentation before the.
Okay, maybe we can get, maybe email and we can get printed copies after. Okay.
I can email it to you right now if you've got your computer, but
No, it's okay. I just
Yeah, I did ask.
saw the.
Ask Jen for it.
Okay.
you asked for it, but I was still working. I've got a lot going on at town hall.
Email's fine.
Yeah, email's fine for me, but okay.
So this is a summary of the budget by org. And it really highlights the size of the Board of Education budget as compared to the rest of all the other budgets. So what we did was split out debt service by into education and town. So the Board of Education.
Can you blow that up to the size of the screen? We can't see it without something in front of us.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Well, can I just blow it up here? No, that doesn't work.
There it goes, there you go.
Oh, is it better?
That's better.
Yeah.
It's getting bigger, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can move this. So the Board of Education comprises about 65% for about $248 million. We split out the debt service into town and Board of Ed. I think going forward, I'm inclined to do this consistently because I think it'll highlight some of the decisions that are made at the Board of Ed level, what the implications are from a debt service perspective, which when they're buried in shared services may not be paid attention to. But you can see really here that the lion's share of the budget, Board of Ed, and then police, fire, public works, and employee benefits are a big chunk of it. Then everything else as you get further down is 1% or less. And the purpose of showing this is that when, I have gotten a lot of emails from parents saying, please find the cuts somewhere else and restore the Board of Ed budget. It's not as easy as that. There's not a lot to work with in many of our other town departments. This was something that I'll skip this if you're not interested, but we have very little grand list growth this year. We're looking at 0.24%. But what does that mean? I've put up some scenarios of what grand list growth can mean, and even if you have grand list growth, if it's due to a revaluation, how that can be meaningful for some, but it can be meaningless or it can be detrimental depending on where your revaluation for your home stands comparison to the average. Are you all interested in going through this? Probably stuff that you already know.
Okay, go through.
Okay, well, so just looking at the budget, on the left-hand column, just looking at a home with a valuation of $650,000. If we, in scenario 1, if the new construction value in town, so new development, if we have $300 million of new development, and what that might mean to someone with a home of valued at $650,000, all else being equal. In this example, 2.414% decrease in the mill rate because the new property development, and believe me, 300 million is not normal. That is a lot. We'd be lucky. This year, I believe we had around 50 or 60 million. That's a lot of development, but we've had that in the past. It was rare though. That would result for this home of a decrease in taxes of about $450. So if you increase expenses by about 10 million without grand list growth, what does that mean? It means an increase in the mill rate of about 2.89%. And that translates into about $540 for someone with a home valued at $650,000. We are undergoing the beginning stages of a revaluation, which will go into effect on the grand list next year. This 30% is actually a pretty reasonable assumption. We might be seeing homes on average revalued at about 30% or more. But in this example on column 3, everyone's homes value increased by 30%. So no one's above or below the average. And therefore, even though the mill rate goes down by 23%, that's not really a yippee moment because you don't pay less taxes in this example. However, column 4 is a revalue of 30%. But if your home, if you live in a highly desirable area or in a desirable type of house, and let's say your home value goes up by 50%, well above the average, you would see a decrease in your mill rate of 23%, but an increase in your taxes of around $2,800. So just going through this, because I'm not sure that most people in this town understand that when the next year the mill rate is going to go down by a lot, that it will on average not really impact most people. It will impact people if with higher taxes, if you live in a desirable area where valuations go up higher, more relative to the average. And you may get a break if your home valuation goes up lower than the average. But I would guess on average, everyone's homes are going to go up. And it's really, that's not necessarily going to impact you. It's the relative increase because that's what how the town will redistribute who pays taxes and how much. At the same time, this also highlights that don't get to lower taxes on average without doing either a cut in the budget or developing. And so we get a lot of emails saying, stop the development, you know, want the town to be like it was when I grew up here. Truth is that would translate into, following that advice would translate into reducing the services ultimately that we provide townspeople, because without development, there is no spreading of the taxes amongst more properties.
Good question.
Yeah.
So, okay, the $300 million example.
So is that just to show?
Yeah, but what, it's something like that would be what percent growth would that be on our?
So we have a grand list of 13 billion or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, you gotta do that, can't do the math.
So
We've actually had that level in a single year?
we have, you know, the Metro Center, if you know, if one year the Anchorage and the, you know, and the Metro Center building, and we've got some pretty big projects that have come online over the past, you know, 5 years. And I think, as you can see on this chart, there have been years with, I mean, it's rare, and we may see things like that in the not too distant future based on the amount of activity that we're seeing at TPZ. You know, we've got things that are being proposed at the Circle Inn. We've got something, probably a settlement that will, you know, or may take place at 15 Umpqua. We've got a couple of big projects at Fairfield, you know, at Black Rock, and some of those are $100 million projects.
So that's a question. Mr. Gerber, I understand your model there, and you said that basically growth and having more housing units is a good thing because it reduces taxes. But and Mark Barnard brought this up when he was before us. It's not always a great thing because more people require more services. And we've been going gangbusters on development in this town for at least 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And it is required continually more Board of Ed money because of more students that are in our system caused by, and I know they always focus on down at the beach area because it was for a while the development where they were taking small capes, hundreds and hundreds of them, and turning them into McMansions, small little McMansions on 0.3 to 0.15 acres. And taking what used to be a 2 to 3 bedroom cape and turning them into 5 bedrooms, which they use for children. And we haven't really focused on whether we're actually making more money. We have more taxpayers to divide it for. I agree with that. But I think that these services are costing us more than we're making. And therefore it's causing everybody to pay more.
I think that's a fair point.
And it caused, like, for example, your wife was on the Board of Ed for this long time. Look what had to happen down at Sherman School, and an annex being put on, and other affordables going to versions of annexes or building more, another middle school we needed. I mean, it's a lot. And I don't know anymore. I don't have any confidence anymore that new development, except if it's commercial or if we can find areas that can be retail or something else like that, really adds anything but taxes.
It's a fair question.
Yeah.
And just these numbers, it's a way to get the conversation going.
I do appreciate the schedule.
Yeah,
Your schedule.
not everyone,
Your schedule is like what I tell some clients of mine, like,
Yeah.
oh, what's gonna happen with the reval? I'm like, the key number you need to pay attention to is how much did the average go up? The only two numbers you have
where
to
you
go.
are relative to.
Did you go up? If you went up more than the average, your taxes are going up. If you went down more than the average, your taxes are going down. Those are the numbers you gotta pay attention to. Don't worry about anything else.
And the budget spending.
Well, the budget's the budget, that's
No,
separate.
but yeah, I
So-
mean,
so
ultimately,
It's
yeah.
a great conversation because the plan of conservation and development, everyone should be weighing in on that. And some of those questions that you ask are hard to answer because, some of these developments, they may require a sewer pipeline, but they actually don't have a lot of kids. So that, there's a lot of speculation as to what the cost will be. And the TPZ will tell you Anchorage or, Alto, like there's like 0.1%, just very small number of kids in those developments. And that may be true. It may be true today. It may not be true, 10 years from now. It's really hard to tell. So it's very, very complicated. But I think in the end, without growth of some fashion, and you've got inflation on top of that, that you just can't, you have to cut services if you don't grow the grand list. And, and how we grow the grand list, whether it's commercial or units that don't have, a lot of kids, people should be, that could be comments for people in the plan of conservation and development, because it really does have how we develop is very important.
So just to that, one thing just to note in the budget. So this budget, there's an adjustment that with the motor vehicle piece, but this budget was based off of the grand list, the base. So that was $32 million or 24 basis points. So that number has been sliding since a peak a few years ago. If you go back actually to the fiscal year 22 budget, that was the largest amount during the COVID era, $891 million, and that accounted for 7.2%. So most of, if you look at the overall budget growth and grand list, that offset occurs with this, to the first selectman's point. But if you went to fiscal year 23, $254 million, so that was 1.91%. And all this can be, just
Yeah, no,
just
get
to
it.
give some basis of what a couple $100 million, but that was the peak year, which was astronomical.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you,
So-
Mr. Welsh. I mean, I think, two things, two things come to mind. One is, the importance of making sure we have, senior housing in our town. because obviously, for many reasons, but that is, helpful to us economically in different ways. Yeah, I mean, it's, in terms of the grand list growth, I haven't studied it. I just assumed that it was higher interest rates that were depressing, commercial development activity. Is there anything else we should be? Any other reason for that trend beyond?
Well, there's not a lot of land to develop.
Well,
So,
there hasn't been,
well, yeah,
it seems like there's buildings going up everywhere and maybe it's just the stage they're in, but, I guess my question is, should we, if it's interest rates, then that would indicate that this is a temporary, blip and that it might normalize versus this is a new normal and we're, if we're going to be seeing
I don't think it's.
grand list growth of 0.25%, that's a little scarier.
I mean, from what, you all had a presentation from Mark Barnhart.
Right.
I don't think it's the new normal, because, last year at this time, were interest rates that high and,
Yeah, they were.
I can't remember. But, yeah,
Last
so
year, like,
last year, the grand list
0.7.
growth was pretty small. I think it was 0.5, 0.6, something like that.
Last year was 0.61, it was 83.3 million.
Okay.
Yeah, love to have 1% a year, but yeah, you're right. I'm sure that plays a factor, but part of it is some of these developments, which may also relate to interest rates. We've had some developers who have run into trouble and they've stalled and things like that. So I am really expecting over the next couple of years, if we have a pipeline now with some pretty big developments, and some of them aren't, they're not going to have a lot of kids in them. But they may still create traffic issues, and there is a cost to that. So, so I don't know. This is more theoretical than a normal board
No, it's helpful.
discussion, but I just wanted this page. So one of the things I'm kind of sensitive to is, and I've complained about in the past, is when politicians hide increases in expenses under a mill rate decrease because of a reval. So this is part of my cathartic sort of process of trying to be not a typical politician. So I do want to say we've had some real, you can see the impact of revals that have been substantial in the past. The more interesting one is when, the blip up when we had a reval after the market crashed, the 2008 real estate crisis. That was, thank goodness, temporary, but there were some smaller ones. And, there was one in 2021 that kind of we were able to hide some expense increases within that reval. Not a full reval, it was partial, but the gross expense increase was higher than normal, but you didn't really feel it in the bill rate because, there was a reval. Just want to touch real briefly on the Board of Ed request. And what I'm showing here is actually not the request. It's it's with the cut and then the restoration of 2 million. I'm still getting emails. People are concerned about, the cut that was made. But when you look at the history of the Board of Ed reductions to the Board of Ed request, this reduction at this point is pretty in line. Very common to have a reduction of 0.8%. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that over the coming days. I thought it would be in the context of the Board of Ed, interesting for everyone to see what other departments said they needed and where we ended up. And each one is a different story, and I'm sure we're going to get to each one individually. A lot of these are, we just said, can't get this, looking for capital outlays, can't get that truck, you can't get that mower, sorry. And there's some probably more notable ones involving FTEs. The police wanted 8 officers. We gave them 4. Not very pleasant discussions, and but that's what happens in a budget year where there's so much inflation, and really even within the cuts that we've made on the Board of Ed side and the restoration, there's still not a lot of places to find money to give everyone what they want to the outside.
Question. Can I ask a question? Are those, and I'm having a hard time.
Oh, sorry, you want me to,
So that is, that's.
these were the
that's your
original,
Proposed budget versus the submissions, and the one that's jumping out on me, I mean, are these apples to apples? I'm looking at the Public Works operations. They really requested 3.3 million more than,
yeah, sure.
Just so a couple of things. So when we
I
had our.
didn't know if we were moving things around to other departments with that, or if that's real.
No, that is real, but that was, I mean, so a few things across all departments. We had our department head, I want to say the meeting was in October or November before the budget submissions. One of those things that we struggled with last year, particularly as an administration, but just recognizing sort of the entire approach of all the departments. We felt like we had to extract from them what they needed, let alone what you may call a want, but might actually be something that's a great idea that they could be done. It didn't matter whether it was big or small. They basically just kept everything to a point that it appeared at times they were barely functioning. So we sent the message out that we wanted them to put, basically put everything in the budgets and let us figure out from there what globally could or couldn't be done, or have the discussions during our meetings about where to take it down. So we anticipated that all of the asks were going to be bigger than they were ever going to actually be, but it was a good way, that snapshot in time, to lay it all out on the table, and then also allow us in the coming years to be able to forecast some of those things as they ebb and flow. So the Public Works is an example, part of it was equipment based, but a lot of it was paving, sidewalk money. They were even elevated over the plan because they basically went with, obviously more better. We ultimately, part of the reduction is that, but when we came down to the final to close the gap, ultimately it went the complete opposite. This is a very lean budget, as you can see when you go through the hearings. We took Public Works, all their lines, and cut to a point and expect them to manage down to those numbers, unfortunately.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Could you roll so I can see the top of this again?
Oh, top?
Yeah. So when you say in the very first column, it says first selectman budget, February 21, is that 2021 or is that February 21st?
February 21st.
First, okay.
So, I just want to make sure that we didn't ask people it was not a wish list.
Yeah.
People, we said, what do you need? Like you'll hear from some people that, we budgeted, we submitted a budget for what we need. It wasn't over the top. It was trucks. It was, various things. And so these were the cuts that we made.
Myers?
So maybe just staying on this example, because it's a big number for public.
Just, we are going to go, definitely keep this in front of you.
Yeah.
And then when everyone comes in, talk to them about it.
I mean, I guess I love to see that, you work this budget's down, and I get the point as a presentation here. Sometimes I worry that, are we asking them to do something that they can't do? So like, how realistic is it, or was a gun to their head and they basically said, all right,
These were all
what do you want the
real.
number to be,
These were all, you mean on the
department budgets, when they were.
on the cut,
When they were asked,
after the
they
cut.
asked for what they need, is what you said. This wasn't a wish list. Need is like, I need this.
Yeah, so for example, the police is really a good example. So, they have their metrics, they look at their metrics against other towns. And what they would like to have the full coverage that they think the town would benefit from. And so that was 8 officers. And we worked with them just, and, you know, we cut half of them. So it's not, and what they'll say and what, you know, Chief Calamares and Deputy Chief Y will say is, we really would have liked those 8 people, but we will make it work with 4. You know, it's not sort of cut and dry. They're not going to say we can't cover what we need. They'll just say it puts strains on us.
Mr. Walsh?
Did you, prior to them giving the budget numbers, did you give them direction of what you were looking for them to have an increase?
Yeah.
You gave them 0. Did you use like zero-based budgeting?
I mean, yeah, I mean, they came to us with a very with the detailed budget built up, which I believe we do every year, built up with the needs and the calculations to justifying every line.
You don't have them come in with like last year's budget and then make them fight for every dollar above that, do you?
No, this year, look, when I got here last year, I was asked a question by the budget director that I wasn't prepared for. He said, "What increase do you want?" And I said, you know, that's not the way I plan to do it. And so, you know, they came in with what they thought they needed, and then we whittled down, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just don't think that's a good way to do it. So now I know what they think they need, but it doesn't mean we can afford it. So.
I'm only asking because, I mean, there have been first selectmen who you find out, and they will admit that they told the departments, I don't want to see a budget come in above this amount. And if it does, you better have some damn good reasons why you're coming in with that. So make this amount work. And then if there's an emergency or something that's come up or some striking reason that you think you can convince me, then you come in with that extra amount. So that's why I'm asking, because there's different styles.
It's a different style. I think you probably end up in the same place, but if you do it the first way, you don't know what they think they need. So, you know, then, you know, I would imagine if in that situation, I would hear a couple of years later, something bad happens and I would say, I never knew you needed that, or that you even thought you needed it. So, you know, yeah, you end up whittling down what they think they need. But at least we know what they think they need. So,
Thank you.
Just one last thing before you move off the slide. So those amounts that were reduced, is it fair to assume that, you know, these are things that are just deferred into the future?
probably a lot of them are. So for a lot of
You
the
didn't hear any needs that you decided were not really needs.
But they're not all deferred. So one of the things, you know, we're looking at, for example, with DPW, you know, we would like to combine some services. We'd like to try to combine some services with Board of Ed, you know, and so when you hear, oh, we need this mower, or, you know, something like that, you know, one of my reactions is, and Mr. Becker's, who's, you know, knee deep in this stuff, is, you know, can we look at it together? Like maybe they've got a mower that, you know, should be doing some of the town stuff, or, you know, so those types of conversations. So they may not ever get, if we restructure something, they may never get that mower, but under the current, you know, structure, maybe they could justify it.
So I'd speak to one particular headcount item. There was at H. Smith, they wanted, there was some additional personnel that they were looking for. They are revenue producers, so we're certainly sensitive to those needs. One of the personnel headcounts in particular was, there had been discussion several years ago about the mechanic position and should it be up there or not, or should it be, this is actually bounced around for probably the better part of the last 2 decades, I think, but you know, and the conversation that I had with Anthony about it was that it really is, the pitch was that the town has a town garage. They have a whole group of mechanics dedicated to the overall fleet outside of police and fire in particular. And there was a discussion that they'd be able to deal with, you know, a lot of this equipment, but they haven't been servicing it very well. So that's the problem. And I said, well, that's not a reason to go and hire another mechanic. If it turns out that after the next 12 months, we can't wrangle this to the ground and make it better, then maybe let's have that conversation next budget year. Because your equipment's gotta be up and running, but, you know, first let's mention that Public Works specifically now is also a direct report, so I put attention there. And, and so we're gonna, our intent is to fix that and make sure that the garage is a service-oriented entity that also, when you bring a mower down there from H. Smith, it doesn't sit to the side for 3 weeks or whatever, and it's come up with. Which is oftentimes location.
There are opportunities to break down silos, but you know,
So some of these
Devil's in the
things are
detail.
deferred and some of them you think you can get more efficient with some structural change in how the departments.
I'm sure some of them are just, you know, simply deferred. There's a lot of opportunity, hopefully. Yeah, this is, I just redid, added a year to a slide last year, but essentially showing that the expense increase we're looking at this year is pretty much in line. You know, it's not significantly higher, it's not significantly lower than what we've seen over the past several years. And that is it. So nothing fancy, but
Other questions from the board on the overall budget? Jeff?
Yeah. In going through the budget, I saw the organizational chart on page 21. I'll correct everything. But as we've known, and Charlton, I talked to the subject, you were, we required work charts for every department. When we went through changes, you required her in the budget. Have work charts per department. And there is not org charts per department in this entire budget. And I don't know why it's there, because we didn't make a change to how we wanted to do that, nor did we remove it. And pursuant to the charter, section 12.3A, and I'll read it. It says submission of budgets to the Board of Finance, period. Each budget shall be in a form and shall contain the details required by the Board of Finance from time to time. Now, I expected when I got this budget book to see an org chart, because there has been many changes that we discussed recently at our meeting, and we were told that we would discuss it during the budget process. And it's very difficult to track that without an org chart. So I'd like to know why there's no org chart by department and how we're going to get that to be able to properly review this budget. Because right now, it's a charter violation not to have this.
I don't think it's a charter violation.
Well, I'm telling you, our.
You just
form is-
read it. It
John,
doesn't
I've
say
got
it has to have an organizational chart. If you don't think this budget has a lot of detail that complies with that charter provision, then I don't know what you're looking at. So you can't say that just because there isn't a charter or a chart for each department, that it's a violation of the charter. I think that's not correct.
Let me just redirect
Change it.
this. So we have, and I honestly don't remember. I thought that putting word charts in was an enhancement we made to this book maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. We had
I
Frank do
think
that.
not a year ago. I
2 years ago?
think it was Brenda who did it. It was, I don't think it was.
Yeah, I know I think it was when Frank came on board, right? Frank reorganized the book for us and I think that was one of the things we asked. Is there a reason it went away?
I mean, I didn't think it added any value, but I am not, if it's, I don't want to violate the charter. I don't think it's a charter violation, but.
Is it a hard thing to
If the
do?
board asks for it to be done.
I'm not saying don't do it. I just don't think it's a charter violation.
Is it
That's all.
Form change, that's
Okay.
the way we're doing it. And I did ask Selectman Kupchak, why did you raise this? She said it came up first selectman said something like, org charts are an old thing, people don't use them anymore.
No,
I didn't watch
It's a
it.
little more nuanced. I think, can we let David, I mean.
So first, and there's a revised version, and we can go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Former budget director created a proprietary system to build the budget. It was a complete nightmare. It took 4 months for staff to even get to the point of issuing the budget book out. There's a reason that it went to midnight on the final night to get everything. It became an absolute knockdown, drag out that took about 4, almost 5 people. The span of, the final home stretch, literally deep into the night to be able
When
to
you say proprietary,
he
Bought
used
his
a
own
system that.
System that he took with
Yeah,
him.
we bought a system, we had to go back and buy the rights to this Adobe product, then we tried to link things, we couldn't. Whatever he did, I mean, it works, it's the textbook example of, you've got to set things up in a way that works for everybody right afterwards. It's not like, boom, hit a button out of Munis or something like that. And that's fine, that was what he did, not fine, but it's his thing, and, live and learn. So we are, one of the last things that we struggled with, final home stretch, literally was the org charts. They kept getting kind of punted off that day because we were trying to get all the numbers to line, and we were running into enough issues with getting things going. So when we went to, are we going to sit here and spend now hours and hours and delay out even deeper into the night over the org charts? I went to the first selectman and I said, this is where we're at. And maybe we didn't understand particularly the board's history on it, but we were actually looking at the budget book, realizing just how much was already there. And we pulled, and we instead of recreating from scratch, we pulled. And that's why even the main org chart hadn't even dropped in, because as you'll see, it's in a completely different format.
Like
when
done
we
by hand.
combine. So, it certainly have a discussion about re-adding, but we could
I
certainly.
certainly
simplify
would
them
have
all.
done
We
it
have to make
to
them.
avoid these conversations, but it was just not, it was.
I would know
a
many of the
nightmare.
org charts. had-
okay, no, I got it.
Yeah, and I would just, the book, last year's book and this year's book does have the personnel summary by department, and whether it's in graphical form or in this table, it gives me the information that I need, and I think it gives the board the information that, but whether I see this table of personnel, full-time, part-time, salaries and headcount, or graphical boxes, like, I think the information is here to be communicated, so.
Am I mistaken? Show me one of those, because I did not see where it shows what they're reporting, who they report to.
Well, like,
Because that's what the graphical thing showed you, right?
No, it doesn't.
yeah, but if you're looking at it within a department, you assume everyone reports to that, I mean.
Tom, does everybody in your department, every single person report to you, or does anybody report to Caitlin?
They report up through me. They do not all report directly to me, but
There we
Caitlin
go.
reports to me.
There we go.
But that's the value of the.
Yeah, and you know what I was gonna look for, Craig? I'm just gonna be honest with you. I was gonna see, because I knew we were gonna have this discussion every night about what the changes were. And Madam Chairwoman, we discussed. We're gonna talk about that when we get to the budget. You could ask all the questions you want to ask about that. You were fair about that. I plan on bringing last year's budget book and having this year's budget book comparatively, and I could then ask questions about it. Seeing the new positions, what it was last year, what it was this year. And I don't have that. So would we be able to get?
Yeah, I
Can
think
we
as we
fo-
go through the budget, though, one of the things that the department heads will do is talk about headcount changes within the department. For instance, when I talk about my department, I'll talk about any changes to Warsaw.
Is it possible that, is it a heavy lift to create the, org charts so that we can do that comparison?
It's a heavy, it takes a lot of time, but if we could do the departments that you're concerned, some of the departments haven't changed, right?
So one of the things I know for me, and I had added this, I'd actually provided the feedback to the budget committee, back in January, I think. I think as I hear what you're saying, what's most helpful for me is when there is a change, especially when we're reorganizing
Few.
departments, like the Parks Department went away. And now it's part of DPW. And so when you can't do direct comparisons, it's not just seeing the org chart itself, but it's something that, combining or disaggregating numbers so we can actually do the comparison to last year. So I don't know if that's in here, but that's something for me that's even, I think, more important. The graphical piece, I understand what you're saying, Jim. I think where we have changes, if we could you know, if we could take the time to do that, maybe it's not a lot of departments, but that would be helpful. I mean, particularly like the ops department that's
Yeah,
brand
so it
new
would be ops.
and like
Showing
parks.
DPW.
Yeah, like the whole DPW and parks where that's changed, I think at a minimum, is that okay with everyone, Jim?
The only thing I would add is I never know at looking at an org chart from the town because we don't put names on it, titles. You never know whether it's the position, whether you're hiring. So it's in the budget, but I mean, if the position is going to go unfilled for 6 months, then it's you're padding your budget, whatever you want to call it. But you know what I mean, so it's nice to know on a org chart if there's any unfilled positions as well, or we would just be making notes as we went, but.
Well, I've been through that exercise myself. That probably is more useful from the personnel summary section. You don't need necessarily the org chart for that. I mean, I'm not against org charts. I just never thought that the department ones were terribly useful. I do agree that the department ones could be useful for, I mean, most of them, you look at the page and it says the supervisor, and then you've got the assistant supervisor.
So how would I know looking at, let's say, page 28, if the theater clerk, town clerk, it says there's 3, how would I know if one of those positions is unfilled?
Oh, so that is something that we are now tasked with improving, but I think Tom did present a vacancy report. So, you know, that would be a separate exercise with, we're trying to create a system that we can pull all those vacancies out and match them to the budgeted position.
But I also think just one piece of caution on this is that this is a snapshot in time. So if I printed, you know, like if we had put that in February and it was filled in March or vice versa. I mean, I think it's one of those things when when the department head is actually here would be. Was anyone, I mean, that's a fair
I'm
question.
thinking more
So
about.
that is,
The Board of Ed is actually a bigger thing because it's harder to fill a teacher's position. And,
so,
you know, those things sometimes sit open for a while, especially before we
yeah,
changed the rates and we started paying them more.
yeah,
So it was a bigger issue maybe a year or two ago for me in terms of
yeah.
wanting to know, you know, how much of that.
Probably heard it a million times by now, but you know, a couple of years ago, the Board of Ed budgeted for a headcount increase of 11 and ended up somehow with 37. Have you heard this? You know, we've been talking about a lot. I totally agree with you that that is a really valuable thing to show the Board of Finance, because if you have unbudgeted positions, if you've got budgeted positions that haven't been filled, we should all be aware of that. It has been a struggle because some of the names of positions in the budget didn't actually match to what's in, you know, our systems, and it's a mapping exercise, but I think we're almost through it.
Thank you. I guess with all the discussions we've been having for the last several meetings with open positions, trying for months to get reports that we've been looking for vacancies, the whole
Got it.
conversation.
Got that report.
Yeah.
By hand.
I understand that. I don't mind something by hand. It doesn't need to be pretty. I mean, I don't care if you take last year's org charts and you mark them up, but I definitely expected it to be in here.
But a vacancy report?
No.
Oh, the org chart.
Org charts, like when we talked about new org, you know,
Yeah, this
new
year's
departments, I definitely would like to see that. I think it's helpful to see, and it certainly, when you have something open, it just lets you know that you could have some room.
So what you're saying, won't most of the organizational charts from last year be pretty much the same this year?
Yeah, they're just
But
take them and mark them
for-
up.
Just don't really have access to those.
I don't care if you make a
I would do it
photocopy and
manually.
draw it. I don't need anything fancy.
Well, we can provide that as.
Yeah, if they haven't changed, that's
It
helpful.
wasn't going in the book with a bunch of.
No, but some of them, like, I know we have the new ops department, but it also seems like, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but like HR, right? A lot of things have shifted where over the past couple of years, it seems like the positions and what's part-time and full-time. So, you know, to the extent there are those departments that have changed, I think that's helpful. You could probably get there through the list too, but I do understand that sometimes when you're trying to understand how it works, you know, and who reports to who, it can be helpful. So if they haven't changed and we can use those, that's fine. And for the handful that have changed, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that affects any of the departments for tonight, but if it does, we could talk through it.
I think the main point was, I mean, you picked on, I think it was the town clerk was the example. Almost an overwhelming majority of the departments are a person. If they have something called assistant or deputy, and then literally 2 or 3 people follow. Cat projects as an example, there's a person and then everyone's below them. You know, Tom's department is a little bit of a different example because of the, partially because of the charters and the internal auditors,
Let's just move, we'll talk about the department later.
But-
Yeah, but, and some of the larger departments too, I think it might be helpful. So if they're the same as last year's and we can utilize those and we just have them in a stapled handout that we can refer to when we're going, that's good. But the new ones, that'd be helpful. Okay.
Going through the org chart that's here, I have some questions. So this emergency management director was really never in the organizational chart of the town before. And it's now here, it's got a dotted line. What does the dotted line mean?
Yeah, so the emergency, this was I believe, a serious gap that we had before. We had an emergency management director that was a fire guy. So he was the fire chief. So we had some emergencies and somehow we weren't coordinating emergency management well between police and fires, getting 2 separate sets of texts, and asking, have you talked, not necessarily, people talking to each other on the different sides of emergency management. I think, this is David's, really an expert in this. And so what this is having somebody who's not the fire chief, who is the emergency management director, that when it hits the fan, they're coordinating, all the various aspects of, emergency management. And so while the police and fire report to me, David does direct police and fire during an emergency as emergency management director. He's also coordinating with the state, with DEMIS. So it has to, I would not go so far as to have a solid line to the emergency management director, because if we ever do that in this town, it wouldn't be an emergency, it would be a senior. Some towns do this. I don't know if Bridgeport does, but you have someone who actually, the police and fire actually report to that, like a
Director of Public Safety.
Director of Public Safety.
Bridgeport has something similar to this, where that individual, if there's like a huge emergency disaster, he's in charge of that, a hurricane, something to that effect. That's what happens here. But they don't have direct control on a daily basis over the police or fire department.
Yeah, that's my question. Is this only for like a hurricane or?
Well,
Or like
huge
fire.
Wait, also, I thought it was also
Clam
something
jam,
like
things
clam
like
jam
that.
and Santa
yeah,
Claus.
there's a lot. A big part of this was SantaCon. So, or a lot of the big parties down on the beach, you're coordinating emergency personnel to be ready to take people to the hospital. And also,
Law enforcement, yeah.
law enforcement. You're also coordinating with DPW, Parks and Rec, because, there's trash pickup, there's pick up fences, trying to put up barriers, things like that.
July 4th fireworks nights.
July 4th is a good example. Yeah, good, really good example. So we don't have to bring SantaCon into the conversation, which is depressing.
So the fire chief doesn't report to David as being the emergency management director on
No.
a daily basis
Not on a daily basis,
or a
no.
weekly basis, only for the specific type of event you're talking about right now.
And they, they do talk a lot, obviously, because he is the emergency management director, but, and it's, but in terms of reporting line, when there's a decision to be made that impacts, their organization, they report to me.
Because the charter for the chief of police says that the chief of police reports to you
Yes.
on matters of administration and operation. It doesn't say, except for emergency operations. And it reports to the police commission on matters of policy. Secondly, it's the same exact line as there for the fire chief. Reports to you on all matters of administration and operation, and to the fire commission on matters of policy.
Well, we can get a legal opinion, Jim.
Yeah.
But I believe that I'm pretty confident that I can have somebody between me and the police chief. I'm very confident that I could have an emergency management director who is between me and the police in matters of emergencies.
Because it doesn't say that you or your appointee. It says you.
Well, we have that on many fronts. DPW reports to me.
Yeah.
So that's so, I feel so overly constrictive that it would never pass muster. If you want to get an opinion on that, I believe that I can't have someone between, like a chief administrative officer, that Brenda had, people reporting to him. It's pretty typical in municipal government.
Yeah, I think we should get it legal.
I mean, I'll just, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, this is a little concerning.
What way?
Maybe you can give us an example of where communication fell apart.
I'll give you an example.
Is it because we don't have a chief of fire right now?
No, we do have a chief of fire. So I'll give you an example. And I made this change after this. We had people being rescued off of the top of cars during a flood. We had a flood in a couple areas of town after a really heavy flash, storm. And I found out about it from Facebook. Okay, so these are the types of things that, and they were rescued, by the nearest first responder. We were not coordinating emergency response among the various players. And it's not just police and fire, but often it's also DPW has to get out there and put up barriers and things like that, sandbags. This is if you want to have a safe town, you need someone with expertise who's actually in these situations above these departments. Because I can tell you, I don't have that training to direct traffic, to direct these guys. And if they're not talking to each other, somebody needs to be coordinating those responses.
I'm just shocked that our top fire and police right now can't handle this.
It's working now with David in this.
I'm just shocked. I'm just shocked that, what did we do?
It wasn't working.
What did we do for all these years without David?
Well, it would work with an emergency management director who's above. It could work. Yeah.
Should they be calling instead of 911?
Pretty normal.
Call David?
Primary role of emergency management
He's the emergency management director.
is support and coordination driven for all hazards events. So it doesn't.
David, you have to speak up. I can't hear.
Primary role of emergency management is support and coordination across all hazards events. It doesn't matter what type of event it is. It's preparation, mitigation, planning, and a response component of doing that. So that is somebody that most of the in the post 9/11 environment, when we moved from what was the old school civil preparedness to a more of the emergency management model as a country, oftentimes in communities like ours, that was more times out of anything, it was dumped on top of the fire chief, sometimes others, but there is a shift underway, well underway in many other communities in our area, including our neighbors, to have a separate individual that is not specifically from one of those agencies or branches. And their job is to connect those dots and to support all of those individuals and their mission. And same to be able to be somebody to bring that forward up to the elected official and to the EOC level during the large scale events. You know, we live in a more of a virtual EOC environment on a day-to-day basis, small, medium-sized events. We don't have to put everybody in a room, particularly post-COVID anymore. But large scale event, you know, that is the responsibility that. This Stratford example has a director of public safety, an entire person, full-time dedicated to that role, who also serves as the emergency management director. Bridgeport has emergency management director that's separate. Yes model. There are numerous examples where they're peeling away one by one and doing that. We have been behind on the times on that. And this is a way of taking it, so you're not questioning, am I the fire chief today or some other thing, while to trying to connect the dots for everybody else. I don't enter a situation, you know, aligned with one particular agency where I have to deal with that. My goal is to support and facilitate and make sure that all agencies and that.
I think that it's, I mean, look, I can just tell you it's working now, and it wasn't before. And you can say, well, why didn't people die? Why did, you know, but I could tell you it was not working before. So, and it's working now. So, you know, that, I think that's my call. We move on.
I mean, we had, we did have we always had someone.
We had a fire chief who was an emergency
Right,
manager.
so the role was there, it's just a question of
Some
now.
towns do that, and more, you know, towns are moving more towards that.
It's
And
like
not
we
only
created this.
that, but we had one deputy emergency management director, you know, guy, and now we have multiple ones from the different disciplines. You know, we have Captain Paris is,
Yeah,
you know, we've made multiple deputies who are in different disciplines in town, and it's working a lot better. And so, you know, this is more of I mean, it's not really a cost issue, is it? So why are we?
One of my questions. It went up, I'm exercising.
Yeah.
Gym, which is great. A couple of questions here. So you brought up 9/11. We've gone through a global pandemic. We've had the fire chief acting in this capacity. You said that David is really an expert in this. What makes him an expert in this more than the fire chief? Like what training, like what, how is he an expert? He's a civilian.
Let Bill in.
Significant training, actually was emergency management director in another town in Connecticut. Gotten a lot of, you know, certifications on this, but I'm not sure why, is this like an attempt to like embarrass it?
No.
So, no, I don't really know
No,
why
I'm
we're
trying to
talking about this.
understand.
Is this a finance question?
Well-
Why are we talking about this?
This is our time, we've been told this is our time to ask questions.
Not a finance
No,
question.
I don't even know what David's title is actually, because on the org chart, you have one title, but then in the budget, you have another. So I'm not even sure, but even David just said, in Stratford, you have a full-time person that's designated. In
Oh,
Bridgeport, you have a
so
full-time person.
The only thing I would
He's got
say,
2 different jobs, he had 3.
if the
we got
question is,
two.
should we have a full-time, separate person?
No, we have a fire chief and we have a fire,
Yeah, but that wasn't working.
by whose measure?
By
It
my
was
measure.
working. What do you mean? We went through the global pandemic. What happened there?
Pandemic.
Hang on.
I mean,
Everyone.
this conversation makes no sense to me. Why are we having it?
So
Like,
Because there's one.
you're
seems like
questioning an
somewhere-
operational decision.
So when I look at a dotted line for the police and fire
You're,
reporting into this,
why is that?
it doesn't make sense to me. It's not logical.
Look, I think we should really stop this line of.
Okay,
Financial.
does anyone have,
I don't know. When we get to the raise in that line, we'll find out, because I'm not sure about that
You can
either.
look at it right now, and there's no financial thing. Look at page
Line for it.
123.
Why are we having this discussion?
yeah, I don't know, I
I
think.
can ask
It's like an
whatever
attempt
question I
to
would like.
embarrass this.
No, nobody
Fire
okay.
chief, this entire organization
I'm gonna
started
ask
to change. We
questions.
can
You ask
about it.
questions all the time. I don't make, I'm asking a question. He said he's really an expert. Above the fire chief, he's an expert. I'm asking a question.
Fire.
He said it, not me.
Fire, can I just, I mean, how many times do I have to say that things were falling through the cracks? And if you don't believe it, I don't know what more I can say. For everything, things were falling through the cracks on emergency management. I wasn't getting informed of big events that were happening in town. I mean, if you don't believe it, I don't know how I can convince you, other than to say they were. So why are we having this conversation?
No, I think people are just trying to understand this. So I think when we're gonna,
think
we
it's
have
more than-
questions about the budget. So I think we got an explanation. If we have questions about the budget and, you know, the compensation, we'll,
Can we not ask about the organizational chart? 'Cause
yeah, but
there's changes all over the place.
is this a change though?
Yes.
It wasn't there last
It
year.
wasn't there last year.
But we had Dennis McCarthy was the emergency management director, right? So we had
It's not on the org.
There were 4 boxes
okay.
in emergency management. Take a
No,
rec-
I hear you. I guess,
But it did, all 4 of those reported into.
no, I understand. Is it, so the role was I'm not trying to give the answer. I'm asking the question. The role was there. I remember,
It has to be there.
the role was there. The role's always been there, but it wasn't, we didn't have the box on
It
the
was
org
the
chart.
fire
It's
chief.
not a new role.
Who had this other
You
job
had one person had
And it
this as a
wasn't working.
part-time job. He was paid
by my
extra.
measure,
He was paid extra for that job, was he not? Or no?
minimal, I think.
Okay, so he had some minimal compensation for that job, but it was there. But that job before was not identified on the org chart, even though it existed. I mean,
It
we
was
had a budget page for it, so we know the job was.
just like the clerk isn't on the,
Right.
it was it was just given to him. It's a requirement and it was given to him. It could have been given to someone else.
Okay.
And it was given to someone else by me. It's my decision.
Got it.
For reasons of what I felt I do feel, first of all, it's my call if it doesn't have a budget impact. And number 2, it's made things much better.
Okay.
No, this doesn't seem like the right forum to be.
We're gonna get to this, I'm sure, but David, what is your title? Just curious.
2 titles, Chief Operating Officer and Emergency Management Director.
Can you tell me on page 24, who's the chief admin officer?
There
That
is, that
represents
was
my role. That is an error in the budget.
The typo.
typo.
Oh,
That was a holdover
I
from
think everybody-
Tom Bremer.
Frank,
okay. And the $40,000 rate, the 30%, does that include compensation for the emergency management
I'm
director?
not currently competent.
So we'll talk about the raise separate in that comment.
I think we should talk about it
I
now.
didn't
Sure.
receive a raise.
No.
Listen, do you want to talk about it now?
Yes, I definitely want to talk about it. Let's talk
I think
about it.
everyone, does everyone here does anyone not know that position was vacant for how many months?
Yeah, we know. It was vacant for half the year.
Does anyone here not know that David Becker was the interim CFO?
Yeah, we know.
Did you, and I think we
Plenty of questions.
presented last year at the table that, Kathleen Simpson was in here with comps for the COO role, and that David's salary was 170. So the fact that it's 170 should not be a surprise.
So and I'll just give my recollection of this if it's helpful. I remember because it was in the backup for last year's materials. We questioned this last year. The chief, it was listed as chief administrative officer, but we questioned the 131,000. And we asked for a salary benchmark on that. I thought it seemed low. We got something from Kathleen Simpson. Do you guys wanna?
Take a break?
No, I had more questions on.
Okay,
We're
but
back there. I
I just
didn't-
want to do one at a time. Can we just please?
Yeah, sure.
I think, so we questioned this because it looked low. And we got a benchmark from Kathleen Simpson that said the market for a COO in Fairfield County was around, 175, 180, something like that. We talked about, I don't remember whether we talked at the table, but we had backup.
Talk to the
And
team.
the question was, should we increase this budget to be, the 175? And then somebody asked, Mr. Gerber, it might have been one of you guys, when are we going to hire this person? And you said, I'm focused on the chief fiscal officer first. So at least it was clear to me at the time that position wasn't going to be filled on July 1, and it would be vacant for some time, some part of the year. And that's why I personally had come prepared to make a motion to increase that salary to the right number. But I didn't, because we, you know, at least in my mind, that was going to be a partial year salary. Now, what actually happened was this position, the COO position, was vacant for half the year because David was acting CFO, being paid out of the finance department, and was doing 2 jobs without extra compensation. So when he moves, so this role, it looks like somebody's getting a raise in the budget, but he's not getting a raise, right? The salary is flat. Okay.
I find it hard to believe that the people at this body don't know this.
Yeah, but everyone's asking the question, so I'm just.
I don't know why you find it hard to believe, because we're getting
This
questions
discussion
from.
so
public.
many
Are you reading
times.
your email?
We've had this
We talked
discussion
about this
so
last year.
many
You don't
times.
remember?
I mean.
Yes, I do.
Kathleen Griffith with Simpson come in. We've talked about it during budgets to actual. I mean, it comes up all the time. So if you didn't know, I'm sorry, but you know, it's been discussed so many times, and I think, you know, saying that it's an increase
All
to
right,
one.
let's be, can we just reset? And I just want to, let's be patient with each other. Let's try to be kind, and nobody's, because otherwise it's going to be a long couple weeks. You're right. We did discuss it. We got a vacancy report. We discussed it. We've talked about budget to actuals. I think we asked repeatedly about the CFO position, and we all knew David was in that position temporarily until Tom came in. So just to be clear to everybody, that constitutes an increase in the budget. It does not constitute a raise for Mr. Becker, okay? In fact, I think you might be the only department head who doesn't have a raise, but that, I just want to be clear about that, right? Because we have gotten a lot of questions, and when someone reads this budget book, it looks like there's a gigantic salary increase in here.
It does, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
I mean, to the,
It
we
does.
got messages even
Right,
today.
I thought you knew that from all.
No, I mean, we're getting a lot of messages. We got a nasty guy
Oh.
today about not fixing the stairs at town hall.
I had to,
Money from staff.
and when it, so I went,
Very misleading. I'm
You're
just
right.
saying that we're
Right.
right about the question.
it's confusing, but that's why I want to make, that's why I wanted to refresh everyone's, I had to refresh my memory. Because I remembered that we looked at this number last year and we asked for the backup. I saw my questions, and then I went, we actually got the backup the night of the budget vote. And that's where we had the benchmark. So I don't remember about anybody else, but I was pretty certain that we weren't going to hire a COO. Because at the time we were talking about going outside for 130,000. Kathleen was telling us 175. But again, Mr. Gerber told us, I'm going to get to that later. So we figured, at least I figured, I wasn't going to make a motion to increase it because I didn't think we'd need the salary for the whole year. And it turned out we didn't. We only need the salary for 6 months. So.
I mean, we didn't put in like a modified budget or whatever. I mean, some people do that. I think the Board of Ed does that.
But to Amy's point, when people look at this budget book, it does look like there's a big increase. And that's why I'm reiterating this, because I think it's important to say the budget, there is an increase in the budget. There is not an increase in the salary. So there's a difference there. Okay. So is there any more questions on the org chart? Jim?
Last year, Water Pollution Control Authority was under Public Works. And that's because that's what's required in our current charter. That's what the charter says. It says, Department of Public Works shall have all administrative powers and duties vested by the town by this charter or by the general statutes. The construction, reconstruction, care, maintenance, operation, altering paving, repairing, cleaning, whatever. It goes on, but it says powers and duties. Water shall have the powers to plan out through, and it goes through the Department of Public Works, operate a sewer system. Now it's its own department and it reports to Mr. Becker. The charter says it's supposed to report to Public Works. How's that not a breach of the charter?
And you, huh?
So.
It works through the Department of Public Works. I mean.
Well, then under Public Works then. it's moved this year. And if we could see it, it moved this year. Last year, it was under the Department of Public Works.
We can get a legal opinion on that. I mean, Mr. Baldwin gave a legal opinion that the WPCA was a totally separate entity and didn't have anything to do with the administration. So if you want to,
Even in here then, if that's the.
well, that was his opinion, and then we have a town attorney now didn't agree with.
Okay. So
So,
then the charter then says if you don't agree with that, if it's not separate, then it has to be under Public Works. That's what I'm just telling you what the charter says.
What section is that, Jim? Just so I have.
It, let me call it up again. I'm like, I'll get you the section.
That's all right. I can look. I didn't mean, but yeah.
Well,
I
Public
thought I
Works,
had it, John.
Public Works,
What?
Public Works is reporting to the COO anyway, so, I'm not,
It should just be under DPW.
yeah, but
I mean, if you,
slide it under, I
you
think
can
it
get an
doesn't
opinion,
matter.
get an
If it
opinion on
needs to be
that.
fixed, it should be fixed.
If it needs to be fixed, if that line needs to go into DPW, then we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Because last year, it wasn't really reporting to DPW anyway, notwithstanding what the org chart said.
We had to assert
I don't know who the.
Role. it
Yeah.
wasn't reporting.
John Marsilio was not overseeing it initially.
But when I got into office, we made that change and they
Yeah.
were reporting to
Okay.
John Marsilio.
Because they're.
Okay. My next question is, and I listened to you, Bill, because you were telling us about some of the changes you were making and bringing some of the DPW people back from the Parks Department and that, whatever. Totally understood that. Totally understand that that was a charter breach before. Totally get that. But in forming this new position, this Chief of Community Service, which Anthony Calabrese is going to be heading, I went to the charter on all this stuff, and in section 9.10, it says Director of Human Services and Social Services, period. Reports to the first selectman on matters of administration and operation, and to the Human Services Commission on matters of policy. So I don't know how you could put somebody between Julie DeMarco and you, because it doesn't, it says it reports
I think the town attorney, I mean,
reports directly to you
you already had a long discussion with the town attorney on this. He did a write-up on this, really?
on the Director of Human Services.
Yeah, on this reporting relationship. He's already opined on this, but he's not here tonight, that someone can report through somebody to me. Like, I don't have to be the one, I mean, and you know, I'm sure in practice that's happened throughout the ages in this town. But Phil Pierce has already opined on the fact that somebody who reports to me doesn't necessarily have to be the one who comes into my office and talks to me. I mean, they can report through somebody else. I can insert a layer over somebody who reports to me.
Okay. Because that's not my reading, if that was the case. Or
But I thought you all already.
signee or whatever, but it doesn't say that. And the same thing happens with the Parks Department, which you said you're gonna have a new Parks Director to take over. Anthony's leaving his position there. And he is going to be now have this new higher chief role of being over Human Services and over the Parks and Recreation Department. So now the new Parks Director, it says, has a direct report to you as well. So, you know, if you can get a legal
This-
opinion on that.
Yeah, I believe that was part of a written opinion, but if not clear, we can clarify.
Well, that's part of DPW now, right? Parks Department?
Well, I think Jim's
Talking
referring
Parks and
to, Anthony is gonna be over Parks and Rec and Human Services.
No, that part I understood. I thought you were asking a secondary question about the Parks Department.
Yeah, well, the Parks Department and the Human Services Department were both direct.
It's really the same question.
Pursuant to the charter. Yeah, they're the same question.
Correct.
Same question.
Okay, well, Parks versus Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
So I think the issue was we created a Parks Department that used to be in DPW.
No, that was just, that was
Parks
just.
and Rec, that was a problem. So that Parks Department is now part of DPW.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec.
I gotcha. So Parks and
I
Rec.
understand the question, but I thought we had already gotten an opinion on
Yeah,
this,
you can
so.
just get clarification. I mean,
Yeah, you
like,
did.
I hope that, I think that,
Yeah, I just want to try to wrap my thing up. If you,
No.
for another legal opinion, the last one is, it says that the conservation director now is going to have a direct report to David as chief operating officer. Once again, section 9.25 of the charter says the conservation director shall report to the first selectman on matters of administration and operation and to the Conservation Commission on matters of policy.
So it's the same question.
Same question. So if we get a legal opinion on all of these, that's the end of my questions in regards to the org chart. It's just different than it's been.
I mean, just as long as like you may disagree with the legal opinion, but if you're willing to go with it.
Because I often do disagree, both for First Selectman
you never
Kupchak,
say anything.
First Selectman Kupchak and for you, because I always feel like they're slightly, they work for you. But I never really say it because I understand that that's the official role. So I never challenge the opinions, generally don't challenge them.
Kind of
Because-
inappropriate to challenge it. I think it's inappropriate to challenge it because we're town officials.
Exactly.
And I agree with you.
But-
And it's exactly the reason why I've never wanted to be town attorney.
Okay. And I think, no, all right, so we could get.
On the,
we can
on the
get-
list, I thought that we had already checked.
That
this
legal
off.
opinion does touch on it, but I think to Mr.
Yeah.
Walsh's fairness to him, it should be clarified.
Okay. Now we can move on from the org chart. Those are my only questions.
Yeah.
Unless anybody else has it.
All right, and before we move on, I just want to say, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here. I think if that's the way our charter, I think it's ridiculous for you to have 18 direct reports. I mean, I don't know, like that span of control is a model of ineffectiveness. You cannot have, you cannot, if that were me, I could not pay attention to 18 people. Like, I think that reorganizing this makes sense. So let's get the legal opinion and clarify it, but
Yeah.
that's my personal opinion, because I don't know how you can
But
really do that. And so like, this makes a lot of sense to me, but we'll clear up the questions and move on.
I think also, it may be ridiculous, but that's why Brenda brought in Tom Bremer.
Yeah.
And I think
Inappropriate.
people felt that they reported to Tom Bremer and that they
And
never
Tom has
saw it.
18 people, so what's?
So in practice, I mean, this is putting a org chart together that we're trying to show the way that people are gonna report
Yeah.
through people to me, but before me, there were people doing that. It just wasn't on the org chart.
Gotcha. Okay.
I was just gonna add to your point that we're going through I believe the charter reform and looking at it. I think it might be worth it to even, I mean, I know you're gonna get an opinion, but I certainly would be, I would propose adding that in there to give the first select person the right to
Delegate.
direct or something, but give the little flexibility in the charter so that this doesn't continue to come up, because I mean, as the commander in chief, you should have,
I'll get my Navy to, but if you wouldn't mind an email to the Charter Commission,
But I think that the key though is it doesn't say report directly to.
it doesn't.
The word directly is not there. And I think that does give the leeway to have ultimately reporting to you through others, but
I would just
it's
be
legal.
crystal clear in the thing saying
A little
that.
bit.
It says who they report to.
I think that
One person.
but it doesn't
It should
say
have
like,
said if that's the way he wants to be, or his designate.
yeah, or
or
if you
his
just
or her
add some
designate.
single language, then it's completely clear that the
That's
one
fair.
person can make the decision.
All right, so we have that on our to-do list. All right, so can we move on to the department budget now?
It's already.
Yeah, some more passionate
All right,
topics.
no, this, okay, so wait, before we do that, we were still on item 3, which is the summary budget presentation. And those were questions on that. So before we move on to item 4, is there any public comment on any of the departments that are covered in tonight's agenda? I see none. Okay. So we'll move on to item 4. Thank you again, everyone. And this is the discussion of the department budgets. So it starts off with the first selectmen's department on page 23. And for the public, who presumably does not have a hard copy of the budget book, as I refer to page numbers, they will not be consistent with the PDF. They'll be consistent with the page number that's printed on the lower right-hand corner of the PDF. So the page number on the hard copy is page 23 for Selectman's Office. Okay. Bill?
Actually, just, it's page 22.
Okay, well, okay, the numbers, okay, so there's a narrative on page 22. I think the numbers begin on page 23. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Gerber, do you want to give an overview of the highlights here?
Yeah, sure. So for me, this was not determined by me. My salary increase was determined by a committee before I got here. It just is an automatic thing. For the chief administrative officer, again,
So we're looking at page 24.
24.
All right.
That was, Mr. Becker was, chief, this will be changed to chief operating officer. And this is the salary he's been making, for the last, I don't know, 6 months. Doing 2 jobs and was under, chief fiscal officer under the finance department. Now we have a CFO. His salary stayed the same. He's COO and it's listed under my department. The chief of staff, this increase was, I think, initiated. The first select woman, Kupchik, initiated a market study of a number of positions. And one of them was actually the one that showed that the most difference between market and current was chief of staff. And this adjustment was in line with that market study. When Ms. Simpson is here, you can ask her about that, but I'm not sure if that was ever, I don't think it was reported here. The deputy chief of staff, part of this is, I think less than half of this increase is a raise and half of it is 2 years worth of COLA that had not been paid, been accrued because of tracking of ETA contracts in a system that we are trying to fix. It didn't really make a ton of sense that people had to wait this long to get a cost of living adjustment. But for
This is a non-union
non-union position,
Follower.
follow, and people were waiting for their COLAs for 2 years and they're finally getting it. I think, yeah, that sort of started under the prior administration and the idea was to wait for the PETA contract to be settled and it was settled a few months ago. Communications director, that is, this number is mainly a geographic shift between part-time and full-time. The impact of that, because she's working up, the maximum number of hours that Lisa Claire, she's pushing up against the maximum number of hours she can work part-time. So the real increase isn't here, it's under benefits because she will be, I don't know if she's going to take the benefits, but the real difference is not reflected in this budget, budget page. It would be in the benefits for if she does take medical. The constituent relations coordinator, honestly, David's not here. I'm not sure why it went up 5,000, but it's an hourly rate. We had someone leave because of for their own reasons and just hired a replacement. And this position answers constituent phone calls and researches things for constituents. And this position's been in place for a while. Interns, this is geographic again. I wanted to consolidate. We've got interns all over the place, mainly in part-time lines in other areas. And I would like to formalize an intern program and have it in one place with one set of rules and ensure that everyone gets a fair shot, et cetera. So we're gonna put some structure around this, and this was consolidating that under B. And that is really it. So if you take out the chief operating officer and really the interns, which we have had interns for years, and we have to pay them now unless under rare circumstances, they're doing it for credit for school. The difference is the increase is about 6.8% to the 13 days a year.
Questions from the board? Ms. Ruggiero? Ms.
Okay, on the expenses, what happened with the educational and memberships? It went down 3,800.
Yeah, so the town has a membership to CCM, the Community Council of Municipalities. And we changed the where that sits, because that's really not for my office, that's for anyone in town. We have board members, RTM members who take classes, things like that.
Do you know by chance, because I'm sure I'm going to see
Page
it.
32.
Administrative services.
Okay, so it's on page 30.
And then page 32, administrative services.
And then a question on the comp side. For the, just starting with the intern, and I do think, I know, most interns are paid. I agree with that 100%, as I have some coming this summer. It sounded like you had more than one. Is it like a 10-week program, or are they actually like working throughout?
Actually a
their
semester.
hours?
Yeah, it's like maybe 2 days a week for a semester.
Yeah, so it's not just like that summer intern 10-week thing. It's like throughout like a semester.
Yeah, for a semester, we did have a summer intern or 2 summer interns last, like discrete projects. And they're typically Fairfield U and Sacred Hearts.
All right, so it's not one, because it's just that head count of one, but I think it's, you mentioned.
No, it's that's not it's multiple. I'm sorry, it's like total FTE,
Understand. And then for the deputy chief of staff, the 14%, you've explained the COO, we went through that. And the chief of staff, you said was really a result of a market study.
Yeah.
What was the increase or the driver? That was, you said, was that the COLA?
That's so it's Jen Carpenter. Half of it's COLA, and the other half is that you deserve a raise.
And the COLA, it was 2 years back or something, right? Is that why? I mean,
Oh,
rather
it's
than
2 years back.
question over and over on most of the budget we're talking about tonight, there was an 8.5% increase that I kept seeing in a lot of places. So I have some questions on why some didn't get it, some got more. But is that part of, that's contractual, I imagine, right?
No, it's not contractual. It's just past practice
But
for the deputy chief of
No,
staff.
no. Sorry, I jumped. There, on a lot of the budgets, there's an 8 that we're gonna talk about tonight. There's so many people that got an 8.5% increase.
Yeah.
I thought that there was some kind of discussions and union stuff going on, and I thought perhaps that was contractual. That's what I'm-
Yeah, there are contractual, well, I should let Tom speak this.
Is that part of what's
There
happening
are-
here with the COLA?
On wages, you always, if they're union and a contract settles, those pent up increases are usually contingency, then they transfer out.
Okay, and I know we'll see that on other pages, but is that's part of this 14% raise is kind of the 8.5%, is that same contractual?
Which number for,
Or the deputy chief, when we saw like the 8.5 in the other budgets, is that part of
yeah,
the
so,
contractual agreement?
there is an increase over the COLA, that was the fact that,
Performance driven or something.
It was just-
Combination
it was-
of
COLA's like a big chunk of it.
Merit and COLA.
So are you saying that Jen Carpenter didn't get a raise for 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. So she didn't get a raise, so you're sort of making up that COLA, and then she got a merit.
That's, looks like it's 8.5% standard.
Giving her a raise on top of that.
Merit increase, yeah.
A lot of times in municipal employment, if it's an unaffiliated position, they will follow a raise given by a union. They're called followers. So if PETA gave their members a 2% raise.
But when you said she's a follower.
Follower, that's what I meant. Yeah. So that's what I think happened here.
Yes, that's correct.
She's a follower of one of the union.
Of the COLA.
This position is, yes.
And we have several department heads who are followers.
Followers, yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Other questions?
Not department, not you.
Mr. Walsh?
Ruggiero went through some of the questions I've had. A lot of them were kind of directed towards the administrative services area. I would like to hear the administrative services area. It is completely changed around.
Yeah.
Changed budget and it's up 283%.
Yeah, we'll-
This board needs to go through.
We'll do that tonight.
Okay.
Are we doing that tonight?
Yeah, I mean, was it on another
Only,
night?
It's not on the schedule at
It's not on
all.
the schedule.
I had a bunch of them.
Let me
Yeah.
just, so what we'll do, hang on. If that's my fault, and I think when I originally did the schedule, I used last year's budget and there was nothing, almost nothing in that department. So I probably thought it was very minimal. So I didn't list it. So what we can do is vote to amend the agenda to include the administrative services department, if that's okay with everybody, because I agree. There's geography changes and there's things in there that we could cover with some questions. I don't think they'll be good.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
the only reason I thought it might make sense to do it when HR is here, because most of this is Paycom. So, yeah,
Okay, well,
That's the thing. It's, it's Paycom, this is Paycom.
but I don't know if that's really necessary.
yeah, no, I think we can, I mean, if we have questions about payroll, we can ask them with HR, but we can do it tonight. And then if there's follow-up questions for Kathleen, because there, people may have a follow-up question on market studies she did as well, so.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
On the register of voters, there's not really a big percentage change at all. It wasn't really about, this is also not on our agenda, but they're both comp related where there's some pretty big swings in the line. So I just wanted to understand what those were, just to, for my own knowledge.
Okay, let's
So
see.
that's possible to, I can wait
Yeah,
till
that
HR.
one we will, if anybody wants to do that, we will have to schedule it to make sure they're here. But again,
Add it to, I don't need to meet with the
Yeah.
person, I can ask HR head.
so part of what, just for everybody's knowledge, the departments that are listed on our agendas cover in excess of 99% of the expenses in the budget. The cumulative impact of the departments we're not looking at is less than 1%, and there's a bunch of departments. So for these tiny ones like historic district commissioner, normally we don't have them appear before us. That's the point of the Google Sheet or whatever we're calling the thing now, so that if we have questions, you can ask them that way and get answers or get data or whatever you want, because otherwise we'd need a whole extra evening for that small stuff. But for administrative services, I don't see any problem with adding that tonight, because we're here and we're there's geography differences between that and what we're looking at anyway. Okay, Jim, do you have questions?
Yeah, I can.
Continue. So one of the big changes we made to administrative services last year as a board was we removed part-time payroll. Because the part-time payroll in administrative services is actually in the first select.
It was the constituent services coordinator, yeah.
So just explain to me where you moved that to the part-time. There was last year, 2024, 83,385.
Yeah.
So is that, explain to me where that position is now?
Well, if I recall correctly,
Part-time or full-time?
yeah, I think that's where Brenda had like constituent services. And we moved that to my
Those two
office.
part-time people. So where are those? There
There,
are two part-time people listed in your budget right now. I'm trying to figure out where that money got moved.
Can I just remind, if you're looking at last year's budget book, you won't have it correct, because I think we made an adjustment to move it to the first selectman's office. But it's not, we didn't reprint last year's budget book, I don't
Yeah.
think. So it might look like it was,
You moved it to part-time. but I'm trying to
No, but
say,
we also moved it to First Selectmen's office last year.
no, I remember that, as part-time payroll.
Yes.
Yes, but no budget, no benefits at all, just flat moving it to part-time.
So it's consistent in this year's budget book.
Where is it? I want to know the positions now.
Well,
That's that,
if I believe that we're talking about the constituent relations
Yeah.
coordinator. And we budgeted the communications director there, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
the position that was in administrative services last year that we wound up moving was the constituent services coordinator.
30,420 we moved. What happened with the rest of the money we moved? Because we moved,
83.
there was more money, wasn't there? It was just 30,420.
You have the 2020, oh,
83, 385 was there.
2024 says 83,000.
the 83,000, so. That, was that the communications? Communications
I'm
director?
trying to figure out what you guys did with the money. I got part of it. I got 30,420 from last year. You had a constituent relations coordinator.
I thought it was communications director, but we can do a mini research project on it.
During the last year under interns, did you have any part-time interns that we paid money to in the Board of Selectmen's office? And not Board of Selectmen, in the First Selectmen's office? That we paid money to?
In 2025 or for?
Current, like.
Current year.
Current year, fiscal year 25.
Actually, don't know where they were paid from.
Were there interns?
Yes, we had interns and they were paid, minimum wage.
Were they different departments sometimes? Is that?
There's some in departments and some are, and somewhere in
Can you get us a
my,
list, I don't need it right now, but can you get us a list of who those interns that were through the First Selectman's office and what their total pay is to date? What is it, and what you anticipated being by the end of the year?
So can I ask that a little bit differently? So you said it was a geography change, that was 16,354. Where was that in last year's budget? Was it in multiple places?
yeah,
Multiple,
like wherever, there was not a lot of control over how interns were brought on board.
so if we go through this budget book, see line items that last year had an intern number and this year have zero?
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
So we get the number on interns for the fiscal year 25, spent to date, and what's anticipated to be spent through the end of the year.
Yeah, I've asked HR to do it already because I wanted to get it and trying to dig it out.
It says zero, and obviously we were paying that from someplace.
Yeah,
Where we were paying.
yeah.
If you could find that, and it would also be helpful to find out the interns and what departments they were being paid for. Like how many were for your office? I presume, it sounds like
Yeah,
a couple of them or something.
So when I came into office, there was one that had already there that was working for Brenda and stayed for a while. Then we've had probably off and on, like 3 or 4 interns. Yes.
Is this the first time I'm hearing that we're paying for interns? Like, and then we don't budget for it someplace?
Yeah, it's too loose. Yeah.
All right, if you could find that out, I'd appreciate it as a follow-up item. I understood your explanation to, Mr. Ruggiero regarding the chief of staff increase of 15.5% and the deputy chief of staff for 14.5%, which was half similar to a PETA contract and half just an additional raise. And then there's a 16.7% increase in part-time constituent relations coordinator. And that's
I don't know.
a hefty increase. And I just don't agree with them. I personally just.
I'll get back to you.
Insulted by the numbers based on, we're cutting the Board of Ed, but yet we're having these increases. I mean, I understand there's large increases for PETA people throughout the budget. First I was like, what's going on here? Because the increases are large. But then I remembered we just settled the PETA contract. So their salaries have gone up for like two and a half years. So I caught myself, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Made me feel a lot better. for a while, when I first looked at it and going through it, I was a little shocked. But I just think these increases are too high. I mean, it's just, you should do a better job of
Well,
increasing them with time if that's what you want to do. But to get numbers like this is just a little bit insulting, I think, to the taxpayer. So.
Well, I think that's inflammatory, because they're the
That's the
numbers,
best word I could use, Bill. I'm trying not to be inflammatory.
is we are trying to pay like the teachers just got a big raise, right? So, to say that people shouldn't be paid their value is also insulting. So, just because they happen to be a woman working as chief of staff in my office. So, I think what we try to be is fair. And, I don't think one group of people deserves to be paid appropriately and one doesn't. So, insulting is probably the wrong word, I think. But if you don't like it, have at it.
I will, and it's nothing to do with women, and so I want to be clear, I never said that, because there's plenty of women who are teachers. You brought that up. I haven't brought up gender of anything. I'm talking about a position, not a person, a position. I want to be clear.
So if I may, just on some of these roles, including line, which essentially had no money with the prior.
You have to talk up, David. I can't hear you.
So in regards to some of these lines, the constituent role and moving from administrative services, the true up for what the budget is now. In fact, that individual is now a new individual in the role. We're part of what this budget is doing is also screwing that up closer to the actuals. We used last year in various role lines like this, the information from whatever was previously there. We didn't know. And remember, this budget was constructed January, early February in a new administration. So now looking at when you take the rate of hiring somebody, the amount of hours they work, when you put it together, this isn't, we've now decided we're gonna, give some individual a raise, sitting in a role. Some of these things are literally taking our actual information of what we're running in the office, putting it into the budget book. So we can provide some additional clarity, but you have the moving from administrative services, and then you have the truing up the actual piece.
Okay, so what we need, and I think I think I had actually asked this too. When we have geography changes in the budget, it's really helpful to provide a mapping so we can avoid all this discussion. And I did ask for, and I know everything's been crazy, so I'm not trying to be a jerk about it, but I did ask for that because we waste an enormous amount of time in these meetings when we don't have that, and when departments are shifting around, it just causes confusion. So we have an open question on where were the intern dollars last year in the budget? And if they weren't in the budget, but we were paying them anyway for some reason, where did they end up? So that's a comparison item. And then the constituent services coordinator or the constituent relations coordinator, just to follow up on the question. So that's a part-time role. So what's that, like 20 hours a week or something?
I think so, yeah.
It's roughly 20.
Okay, so that's, and then the hourly rate, did that change from what we've been paying historically?
We can get you the hourly rate.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay,
It's in the ballpark.
all right, so it's because I don't, on some of these, and I appreciate that you guys inherited some of this stuff. I thought the hourly rate was consistent with what we were paying, so, but that would be helpful to know. Okay.
And I remember, last year, there was a lot of confusion about that role, because that role, I don't think existed.
No, it was in administrative services.
But also, I believe Brenda took another job and transferred part of it to this new role, and they brought in somebody
I don't know.
to do this. I mean, it was very confusing 2 years ago.
All right, so, but we had this role filled this year, and now it's, we have a $5,000 increase, which I'll presume is either we were under budgeted last year, or we think the person's gonna work more hours, or there's an increase in the hourly rate. So just let us know what that is. We don't have to get into it now. That's one of those things we can get in writing in the sheet. Okay. Shane, you have a question?
Just, so you mentioned that there had been a market survey done, I guess, a couple of years ago. Is it possible to get that
This year, yeah.
like a new one?
Yeah, this
Well, that
was
would
done
be great,
this
because
year.
I feel like we could just like so much of the stuff that we talk about with these, same thing last year.
We have someone in HR who's calling around. I mean, it's not easy to dig this stuff out, so sometimes you have to call HR directors.
That was it.
So your market study is going to, it's not we're hiring an outside entity, getting a study. You consider a study to be somebody in HR calling around to a couple of different towns that are like ours and say, what do you pay the person?
I don't think that, I asked about that and I thought that we could call somebody or hire somebody to do it. And the answer I got was that that wouldn't get you better information. Then, I mean, we do have like an employment company that market search company that we have. But and I think they may have asked that person, but the way to find out what other towns are paying is, and it's not all, sometimes it's disclosed, like we disclose more than most. You can go in, you can see what someone's getting paid, but most towns, it's not that easy. And also you can't see the benefits. So if someone's on a pension, you have to factor that in. So you need to get like a benefit package as well. So this is like one of our HR people apparently called, 10, 15 towns. I don't think it would be nice if there was if CCM would do it for us.
They did it on, but not every position. Like they did it on a few.
They did it on ones where, yeah, they did it on, I believe it was like eight or so positions. That's where we came up with some of the raises for department heads this year was through this study.
One other thing on a part-time, and I heard you talk to Ms. Ruggiero about this regards to communications director. And as you know, and I'm not going to relitigate it, I don't agree with that position. I litigated that last year. I'm not going to relitigate it for the same reasons again this evening, but I don't agree with it.
Fair enough.
And so, but what I do have now a problem is you sold us last year. Part of your sales job on why you needed that person and why it was going to be a benefit and why it was a great deal was that this person didn't need benefits. And now all of a sudden they're getting about the same amount of money. And now they're gonna get full-time benefits, which to the town, what do you guys have as an all-in number for benefits? Over $30,000 now, 35, 40?
8% or so.
What do you think that's approximate per employee?
You said 18.
The cost for health insurance per person.
Is it 30?
Really, it's around 30,
Including health and
Health, 401k,
Dental,
30, okay.
about 30%.
how much?
it's in that ballpark.
30,000 or 30?
If you assuming it then.
I think you want the incremental though, right? Because when you talk about fringe like we don't, like FICA and whatever, all that was already being paid. So you're talking,
this would be medical.
so the medical is right? So that's the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, that's one question. I'll just let you ask. You want to just answer that and then I'll let you make.
I'd love to answer that because while I understand that you're perfect right not to agree with that position. This person in this position has been a fundamental, part of my administration in terms of fighting United Illuminating, putting together a campaign for safe. I mean, she's been dragged into or actually initiated in some cases things that I'd never envisioned, and she is really highly valued by the people that she works with. So her hours have pushed up against the max too many times. She's had to leave in the middle of things and in order to not go over her hours, and it's become a hindrance to her achieving. I mean, she's a really high achieving person, so we're getting a lot of value out of her. I mean, some people don't like the idea and they call her a PR person or something like that. But, the communications piece of this has been fundamental, in terms of transparency, but also organizing and motivating people to, for example, we've got another fight coming up with the utility, with the Aquarian acquisition. Like these things just don't happen on their own. probably one of the reasons why my predecessor sort of fell down on the job, and some of these things didn't have somebody to go out there and actually do some of this work. So I disagree with your assessment as to whether it's needed. And in terms of the amount, I think she's probably making significantly less than she would, but in the private sector, I know she's making less than she did as a contractor. But she loves her job, so I feel pretty fortunate.
Well, your predecessor also was able to do all this stuff, just like every predecessor in the history of the town of Fairfield. Every single first selectman for the town of Fairfield never had a communications director. I call him a PR or spinmeister, but that's what I call. But they never had that before, and they were able to make it work. And your predecessor also had a newsletter that was extremely popular. And the newsletter is not the same quality anymore. So it just raises some questions, and I'm having a problem now having to pay 30% more on this number, which would be about $30,000. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, that's fine.
Mhm.
That's opinion. That's your opinion. And I'm telling you, that's not the opinion.
It is, and
Not what I'm hearing.
No, I hear you. I gotcha. Okay. Are there any other questions on this?
But I would like to just add one little thing.
Sure.
No one before Brenda did this, so when you say in the history, I mean, probably should retract that because I don't think Mike Tetra had it. And I don't think Ken Flato had an email. So Brenda started this. But it didn't include, it
you're the
didn't,
communications director?
Brenda started the townwide.
Newsletter.
Yes, the newsletter.
So you're saying that in the history of Fairfield, everyone has done it. She started doing it.
I say in the history of the town of Fairfield, the entire history of our town, no one's had a communications director.
Right.
Yeah.
But you would admit that many towns do have.
Okay.
I just have a quick question on the salary increases in general. So you mentioned that this, I don't know what you want to call it, a salary review or study was done. Was that for all department heads or was it?
It was for many, not all. And, we're gonna have to do more. My good friend Bucky Marcilio is retiring.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to do, get an understanding of what we're gonna have to go out with for that, especially if the charter doesn't change and it's a PE with, professional engineer, certified engineer with all of the management qualities that we have currently with Bucky, that's gonna be a lot. So, but we need to make sure that we know what the right amount to offer is because you just can't hire that position on the cheap. That would be a big mistake.
The only reason I'm asking this, and I'll just be candid, is, some of the feedback we've got has been critical that there were all these increases in your department. But it sounds like this market study was broader than your department and
Oh, yeah.
and we're gonna see raises for other market adjustments for other departments. Okay,
Parks and Rec, for conservation, these were problems, problematic.
all right. And that's,
You can't afford
that's,
to lose. I mean,
no, I understand
I
that.
hear all the time that, oh, the person's on a pension, you're never gonna lose them. I mean, that may or may not be true. I don't know, but that's no reason not to pay someone
Right.
their value.
Okay. So that was done more broadly than your department. Okay. Are there any?
Follow up on your question then?
Yes.
You do these market studies. Are you looking at the job or are you looking at the experience level? Because all of these people, many of these department heads in our town and other towns. Somebody could be there for 5 years. Somebody can be there for 25 years and have had raises all along and have the experience behind it. So how do you do your market study is it just regards to the job or is it based on the same experience level?
I believe it's the job.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, how much does a DPW, I mean, they haven't done DPW, or maybe they have, maybe they have looked at DPW, they did look.
They've started, and we've had people suggest DPW director, oh, maybe we'll get this one or that one. So we're making almost 200K. This goes all the way back to all the conversations we repeatedly had. Welcome to Fairfield County. Welcome to 2025. This is the reality. I mean.
I guess it all depends though, David. Wouldn't you agree that if we get somebody very experienced that we're very happy with, who's done the job for 20-something years, that we want, maybe for the last 10 years of their career, we would pay them that amount of money. If we're getting somebody who's been a DPW director for 2 years, you know, it's,
You want a DPW?
But I think it is there.
I'm not saying who you're hiring.
Isn't it fair to say when you get a study, there's a range? It's not, there's a range.
There's not that many comparable towns, so they actually have the name of the person. Yeah, and so it's the job, it's the size of the job, whether or not, you know, if you're a Parks and Rec head, you know, do you have a marina or not? Do you have a, you know, and how many people are reporting?
But when you do a study, you don't come up with one figure for a salary. It's a range between
course.
175 and 200, and then you,
Like a
and
science.
based on your, this candidate's experience, that's where you place it.
I'll take him off. To give him
Highest paid.
he's talking, but I was gonna give credit to Jim over the fact that he's right. If we hired someone who was the junior but up and comer, you might start them at
Or lower.
The problem that we've experienced in this organization for a long time is, once you bring them in at that number, it seems to be like, you just give them a COLA for the rest of their career. Other than maybe the longevity, which we're trying to get rid of. So trying to have an organization that starts to get used to the fact that if you did that, and you'll see this with some other departments where we brought some people in, you know, we are trying to add, you know, some dollars in there. We're not even bringing them totally to the market, even when they have lots of experience. But in this lane, simply calling them for the rest of the career isn't the right choice. And we're trying to put it.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
it's dangerous if there's no pension, there's no real hook to keep your.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on unless there's other questions on this budget. Does anyone have any other questions on any other line items in this budget? I mean,
I'm sorry, I have one question.
Yep.
I was just curious. Out of all the raises here, like the first selectmen's is extremely modest, like, I'm just very curious, I guess, like,
It's under order.
Why? Because I'm not doing it for the money.
I know that, but I guess I was just
You might be the
wondering.
first one who hasn't.
No, I know that, and I'm not.
No, I'm seriously, it
Well,
really.
I'm telling you that
is-
you might be the only person that I could think of in the last 30 or 40 years, maybe 50 years, that the job of first selectman wasn't the highest paying job they've ever had.
I don't care.
No, I'm not saying that. No.
Oh,
No, I'm just saying that that's the case.
That's actually a compliment to you. Compliment to you.
I'm not doing-
Bill, take the compliment. No, but what I'm
Does that mean
wondering
you like
is-
me? You really, really like
No.
me?
Mr. Mitchell,
Likes me, you really, really like me?
on this
Okay.
committee
Yeah.
before.
We set the salary for
We
first.
set the salary and it's based on a survey of what other first select persons or mayors or whatever sizes of communities. We've done complete studies on it and we've come up with this and we give them a raise usually for a period of time of what it is. And that's the way we do it.
It's done right before the election, so
Yeah.
there's an election coming up. It doesn't matter who wins.
So if I
And
could
it's
just
really
finish
hard
my
for a first
question.
selectman to win if you want to say, I want a 40% raise. It's really hard to win the next time you're up.
When I understand that, that's why it's done probably before the election, because they're not gonna have a say in the comp, but is it customary, because obviously we have, just looking at this, the CFO makes more, the COO makes more, and I'm not questioning that. I mean, I think that I'm just asking, is it customary for the first select person to make less than lots of positions?
I think it's common.
I just didn't, I was
That you have to
curious
get
to
a
know.
CFO. You know, you're talking about hiring somebody like you know, for me, it's a passion, but you're trying to hire someone competent
I don't question that. I think that's well deserved. CFO at 150 isn't gonna happen.
We've actually, probably there's a history of being cheap when we shouldn't have been cheap.
I just wasn't sure, and it didn't matter what the titles were, it could be conservation director, I'm just not sure if, I just was wondering, is it common that the first select person, who's the boss, has people, cause I grew up, I'm in
You can
corporate.
find many.
It is common in other.
But that was my only question, I was just wondering. It jumps off the page like it's very small.
All right, so we can do administrative services, but since we have Betsy, who's been sitting here patiently in agony this whole time,
Sorry.
why don't we move to the town clerk next, if that's okay? So that's on page,
And it follows the page order.
that's at page 26. That's good.
This is a quick.
So, welcome. It's good to see you. And if you would, can you take us first through your revenue numbers and then the department expense numbers? So again, for reference, revenue begins on page 20, revenues on page 26.
So as you can see, I boosted conveyance tax. At quarterly review, I had indicated how we're trending actually ahead of budget this year, so knock wood, it continues. I know there's low inventory, but our price points, we're getting some really good sales right now. So pretty confident that I'm gonna hit budget this year and thus for next year. Unfortunately, because of the refinancings drying up, reporting fees are down. And I never know if it's going to be a regular mortgage or a MERS mortgage. And now we have a new nominee that's similar to MERS mortgages where the state gets bulk of the recording fee. Now we have DART, which is Digital Asset Registration Technologies, and that literally just came to be like February 1st. I'm not surprised about that.
The state agency?
It's similar to mortgage electronic.
Oh, okay.
So is that a legislative change that?
My professional organization asked the state if we're to treat those like MERS mortgages.
Okay.
So we have to get with CADIC and others and, just to double check everything, but that's how they're being treated. So instead of my portion, that I would get on a regular recording, a chunk of money goes to the state.
They're raising taxes, they raise fees.
Yeah, basically.
Any questions on revenue? Ms. Ruggiero?
Just two quick questions. Certified copies.
Yep.
Why is that increasing?
We have a statewide death registry now, and the funeral homes in town are basically getting their certified copies through me as opposed to going to, other towns where the decedent passed. So they could get it through me, it's easier. And also, all our records, we're trying to get more and more land records online, and people just make copies from home or their office.
And then I was just curious, this is small dollars, but the marriage licenses is like marriage in vogue here now?
Penfield's reopening. So we'll have more, we get more weddings down at the two venues.
Oh, so they get married here and they get the marriage license here. Okay, that makes sense.
And they get certified copies of the marriage license.
Yes.
They get a portion of the divorce.
We should propose that. We don't
Yeah,
have a
that's
board
good.
though.
It's terrible.
Wording of the marriage.
All right, any other questions on revenue? Okay,
I know it's small, but the filing fees, did that rate go up or something like that? So, it's a small dollars, but it's 16.7% almost.
Literally, they're rolling out a new trade name certificate.
Gotcha. Okay. I'll talk to you about that.
all right, expenses, you just paid 7 and page 28.
Advertising, that's my big increase.
And then I can't remember, so the town clerk salary, when was the last time we We did that.
prior to the 20 election.
So is it, when do we have to do that again?
That's the first selectman does.
Now, okay, so this isn't as,
Not like
this is a
tonight,
placeholder.
but
Yeah.
during,
During budget session.
Okay, Jim, you have a, you're gonna homework
We gotta
assignment.
we gotta
Can you,
figure out
would
what.
you be willing to lead that process again?
Oh, of the
Town clerk?
town clerk and selectman, first selectman. We did it at the same time.
I don't remember how we do that.
Yeah, we did it at the same time.
It's just done before their term.
Right, but if we have to do the town clerk this year?
mine's in the statute. I don't do it like that.
Yeah.
The town clerk position, it's statutory that, and there was a legal opinion.
It's every
that
2 years?
You
Why,
could do
are you
it
up for
prior,
election again?
no, it's prior to the election and then at the mid, it's in the state statutes that it has to be handled like that.
I don't remember how we handled it though in the past.
Oh, I have the minutes if you need.
Okay, send them to
I've
us.
got all sorts of backup for you.
So this is just a placeholder until that is done.
Put a placeholder in the budget.
Right. Somebody actually asked a question
I
about.
just asked him.
Well, because I actually surveyed other town clerks to find out what their salaries were and, you know, department heads and mid-management and where I fall.
So we, last time, I'm
Do
trying
your
to,
own market
And the
study.
last time we had to give you.
Double check.
I was on that committee the last time. We had to give you based on you being below market, right? Okay.
so did we vote on that during the night of the budget or
We
when
did.
did we vote on the night of the budget? Okay.
So we gotta remember to do that.
Yeah, so Jim is gonna,
You want me to do from now until before the budget comes, before we vote? Next 2 weeks? Okay. I'm sorry.
well, you did such a great job last time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sure.
So
It's a committee of one.
we gave you a break from the contract, from the
Remember that.
administrator's contract.
I watched.
If you wanna send it to me too, I'll look at it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Email.
I was like, I don't,
John and
why
I
am I
will.
not, usually pretty slick.
Bipartisan.
Are there any other questions on the town
You just told me.
expense budget?
Yeah. Way to go.
Going once, going twice? Any other questions on this budget?
2%, I like it.
Okay.
Should have had you start.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry to make you sit here for so long.
Freaking easy. Do we need to make a motion to hear?
Yeah, so administrative services is next in the book, so I would like to make a motion to hear the administrative services budget, which is 01050 on page 32, second arrow. I think we have to have full vote on that, all in favor?
We're adding it to the agenda.
Okay, we are adding this budget to the agenda. I believe that's the end. Okay. So, Mr. Gerber, or
Yeah.
or Mr. Harris, can you take?
Well, the easy one we already know is CCM was moved from first selectman's budget here. And I will let Tom speak about Paycom.
The professional fees consist of Paycom, which is $165,000. 150 of that is really the subscription fee. 15,000 is for the purchase of or the license of a additional packet for during garnishments.
During what?
Garnishment, salary garnishments.
Is that a one-time
I think it's an annual fee.
annual? Okay.
How much is that, Tom?
15,000.
Garnishments?
That's like a
Yes.
module, an extra.
Yeah. Currently, that's done in payroll. And,
How much is the system itself?
150,000.
150.
That's a one time,
No, there is an annual.
No, that's the annual.
150 a year.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
So, so the 150, which is what we have in place now, is that the onboarding and time and attendance?
That's the
Whole
entire
9 yards. So we don't have it all implemented yet, but we are paying for it. Okay. And when do we expect to get the other pieces?
The
in?
rollout it started now for the time and attendance, so.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
And when Kathleen is here, she can speak to that in terms of the exact time.
This is just for the town? Or is it
Correct.
used for,
This is just for the
it's not
town.
Board of Ed, it's just.
Correct.
Yes.
What?
We started paying for the time and attendance.
No, we haven't, but it's in the budget for next.
Budget for next
It's in the budget for next.
Oh, okay. So this is,
When it goes active. it's-
Correct.
got it. Okay.
Assumes full head, count and all the
This
metrics.
is next year's budget.
Thank you. Okay. John?
I was just gonna, can you just, have there been any hiccups in rolling this out? I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've heard things.
Yeah, of course.
So let's just, I promised certain people that I would ask that question. So that's why I'm asking, get it out there. Tell us a little bit about the rollout, what problems you've had, if anything, and that type of thing.
And I can't speak to the beginning, but,
You guys are hitting, so.
I mean, there have been problems since the beginning. There have been problems as recently as, today. I think that as of today, I'm still losing my voice. As of today, I think we have finally resolved the last of the issues which related to a, disclosure item on a W-2.
I've heard of
But I'm told that that's all resolved now. But there have been basically issues, throughout the process with it. Unfortunately, several of them related to the W-2 filings.
Was it because, was it?
Well, I think, again, to Monday morning quarterback is kind of easy.
And I
I think
understand.
that, there was not a process in place to really do an appropriate implementation. I don't think there was a lot of training on the front end. So I think that kind of flowed through in terms of implementation. I think that's a part of it. And I think we should revisit whether, some of that should have been in finance versus payroll, HR. So.
Who is the point person going forward on this?
I think that, that we still are in the process of resolving that. I think that eventually, it probably will move into finance.
So you,
Yeah.
okay, all right. Mr. Penley?
Can you just give, I had asked this at the last meeting and I think you provided with the audit, but do you want to just give a little bit of color about why you moved here? Like what were the inefficiencies that necessitated moving on to Paycom? What's it going to solve? Because there's going to be hiccups. I mean, I've been involved in big data migrations in my career and there's always hiccups. So just to give a little color around what motivated this.
Well, Tom wasn't here, so I guess I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
And David can do. You remember the review that Joe Sinifani did? Did you ever read that? We had some material issues in process and lack of controls and just errors, significant errors all the time. I issue with withholding. We actually discovered kind of late in the game that there was a sizable penalty paid to the IRS because we weren't withholding properly. During the migration, because of the migration, we discovered that HSA, people on HSAs were not being, their W-2s were incorrect. They were actually, it was being withheld on a post-tax instead of pre-tax basis. There were errors all over the place, and it was pretty clear from the review that something had to be done. So the question for me at the time was, do I build a payroll department? Because we didn't have a functioning payroll department. And there was a lot of blame to go around, and different departments were blaming each other, and it wasn't conducive to a good working environment. But the main question was, do we build a payroll department? And I just didn't think that, that we were interviewing, different payroll providers, and these guys had an integrated time and attendance system that appeared to be superior. And we hope it is, but there have been hiccups along the way. And there's still figure pointing. The Paycom people feel that they were not getting the appropriate level of cooperation from certain people, and people within the organization were still pointing to other. So it's not been easy, and very frustrating. So I think we're over the hump from that perspective, but having W-2s have to get corrected, and that was a real blow. And it was healthcare reporting. It wasn't sort of pay. healthcare reporting. I think they reported on their W-2 the employee share, not the 100%. I think the government needs it for the Cadillac tax calculation, and they only had a small portion of the total cost. So it had to be reissued. It definitely a lot of hiccups along the way, but right now, working on the time and attendance piece of it, and it should be far superior to what they currently do. but
Time and attendance should save a lot of time, right?
Time and attendance will, unless something horrible happens, it's going to save department heads a lot of time. Because they're, especially like DPW, they do all this stuff by hand. Like they do a lot of the time and attendance, keeping track of it by hand. So, John Cattell was one of the people who said, you got to do this. Like, this is driving me crazy. This is taking up like hours of my day. Anthony Calabrese, it's like this, we got to do this. This is really detracting from my day. So there's a lot of reasons. Did not have to do the full package. Could have done time and attendance only, and tried to integrate that into Munis. Plenty of towns do that, but we were having so many problems with Munis that that this, we thought this made sense, but we're not there yet. So I'm praying that once we get there, in a few months, we're going to look back and say, oh my God, everyone's so happy. Certainly not there.
And then for Tom, thanks, thank you, Mr. Gerber. For the fees and professional service, what's the other number? Because you said
Courier, it's primarily courier services.
courier call time. Okay, courier service, like people carrying packages to.
Mail.
The town,
And an inter-office.
the town has an inter-office system, and we talked about, is that like antiquated? And we were told it's like a lot of it is, larger things. It would be a real pain to scan and like maps.
Mr. Meyer?
So the way I understand Paycom is that you basically outsource payroll. Who owns, I don't see obviously a payroll manager in finance or HR, but like which function owns this relationship?
But right now, it's still in HR. And we need to talk through the transition in terms of moving it into, or at least some portions of it, into finance. Obviously, the front end hiring onboarding process needs to remain in HR. So we're going to have a meeting with HR just to really go through the division of responsibilities there. But basically, all of the onboarding and front end hiring pieces of the system will be in HR. And then anything that relates to communicating payroll data to Paycom would be in payroll.
Okay, and I understand we want to walk before we run, but I did hear conversations about shared services recently. Is this a scalable, is this something that you honestly, I don't even know if the Board of Ed does payroll better than the town right now, but should they be using this?
Board of Ed does do payroll better than the town right now, but and I talked to superintendent about this months ago, and he said that he's got like these two very experienced payroll people who really know how to use Munis, and he's worried that they're going to be retiring soon, and that knowledge base is going to be lost. And at the things are a little different with the tension now with cutting his budget, but hopefully he'll that would be one of the things that, because I think they could probably benefit from this as well. But if you just look at the track record over the last like 6 months, like they would be by far the superior performer on this. But that knowledge is going away.
They've had their share of problems over the years as well, but.
Oh, I forgot you. Yeah. So not perfect,
Right.
But I think they brought some people back out of retirement. So it's really for them, I think it's part of it is just personnel.
Thank you.
That would be one of the areas that would make a ton of sense.
Other questions, Mr. Walsh?
Tom, did you say there was a problem today? Another W-2's to be issued?
Well, the last problem I think was resolved today. It was not a new problem.
Okay, so how many W-2s have our employees gotten?
I'm sorry?
How many W-2s did our employees get this year? 1, 2?
I'm not certain. I think they were on average probably 2 or 3. I can't give it.
2 or 3?
There were at least 2, yes.
So have our employees like gone to H&R Block and now have to go back there?
Some of them will. The changes the last changes don't impact taxable income.
Okay, but
The
they're,
reporting boxes.
Yeah.
like-
but some of them had to do like.
Yeah, I mean, when the original W-2s were sent out, a notice was sent out indicating that there was a correction coming, and the employees were advised to not file their taxes. And subsequently, there was a W-2 filed, and some of those needed to be corrected. So at that point, someone may have filed their return and needed to refile. Possibly, but I don't know that for certain.
All right. Reimburse them?
Sorry.
Reimburse them if they have a tax preparer?
Well, it's part of some of this is part of a larger problem that there was incorrect withholding for, because of something that's been going on for years that was caught. And that I believe some of the W-2s weren't like.
What actually sent out? Some of them weren't
were sent out before they were adjusted correctly.
And it's been going on for years?
Yeah.
So are people gonna be having tax liabilities for years and interest?
So they may have overpaid.
They may have overpaid?
Yeah, this was an HSA deduction that was done post-tax that should have been taken out pre-tax.
And I believe that was picked up by
Discovered by PayCom.
Paycom, yeah.
So it's,
This sounds crazy.
well, you saw the audit or the review. I mean, it's crazy. Whole thing's.
I mean, I think one of the things I'll just say, I mean, my experience, the good thing about the outsourcing is it sounds like we had hiccups, but you know, this is their core competency. So when it comes to things like payroll tax withholdings and payroll tax filings, and the idea that we're dropping 10 grand in penalties because we are doing incorrect payroll filings, like that shouldn't be happening. So, and it's a lot for personnel to keep up with things. And so we don't have to worry about that with an outsourced provider. I mean, I'm sure some of you have worked with ADP or whoever. It takes a lot of that off the plate in terms of having to keep up with any, you know, payroll tax regulations. So, you know, that's a tough one. You know, your HSA coming out of post-tax money kind of defeats the purpose. So I don't know how that's going to get employees, but I think in the long run, this is, you know, when we get the time and attendance in, and I'll get off the topic, but based on, you know, our conversations with Joe Centofanti when he was doing the review, I mean, we have department heads and employees spending thousands of hours throughout the organization on manual time and attendance things. It's ridiculous. And so when we get to the point where this is implemented, and I don't know, people do it with their phones or whatever.
Choice, but most people at home.
Yeah, and it goes through a workflow and it can be approved. I mean, it's a big deal. This is something we've been needing to do for a long time.
And the onboarding and offboarding is, you know.
And that's the
everything.
other thing. We've talked about onboarding and offboarding issues with people quitting and not turning in, yeah, whatever. So there's a lot there, but having a you know, a competent implementation and having a good project manager on the payroll side, on the Paycom side, and the right people around the table on our side is critically important. So anyway.
In the entire process, will more or less work be being done by HR?
I can't speak to HR.
Yeah, after the.
After this, I would say less.
Less. How much less?
I don't know.
Okay, so there should be probably,
They estimated, Jim, that it would be like 80% less or 90% less.
okay, so there should be significant savings in personnel. Right?
Yeah,
They should probably be able to get rid of somebody, at least one person.
well, no, I mean, they were,
And less work.
well, they were putting, I mean, there's a lot that they haven't been doing that they should be doing.
We have no performance management system in this town, for example. Like if our HR department is spending as much time as they are on payroll, I think that, I mean, I don't want to speak
That's
for
what I'm
you guys,
saying, that is
but,
what I'm.
you know, I think that if we can you know, I know, for example, because we lived through the review that Mr. Santafanti did. You know, at the beginning of the fiscal year, we had our assistant HR director was spending the better part of a month, like manually inputting, you know,
Almost all the stuff.
shift differentials and union pay. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so, and he's supposed to be our risk manager, right? So like, these were just,
Trained for that.
or do other things, whatever. But the point is that to the extent we have, we're not getting to FOIA things. We don't have a performance management system, all this stuff. You know, part of the problem is.
Policies too.
Policies,
Policy.
training.
Job description.
All of it, right?
They need to be a norm.
Devoting your department to, and it's not only, I'll just say one more thing, because I don't want to speak for you, but it's not only the manual effort to do it. It seems like they were spending half of their time fixing mistakes. I mean, one payroll issue for an employee could absorb a day of someone's time training.
So demoralizing.
Yeah, so, and it's
You have
terrible. for
Police and
employees.
fire guys coming in saying, it's off again, like, didn't pay me the right,
Yeah.
I really,
And let me remind everybody, I don't think anyone's forgotten the firefighters. It took them almost 4 months or something to get their retro paid out because that was all being done manually. So I mean, I hope that the rest of this implementation can go easier and gets managed, but man, something had to happen here.
Well, no, but I think there's a fair question. So are you gonna be able to get rid of somebody? And right now, they're so backlogged on stuff. I mean, I looked at my presentation that I gave last year, and front and center in that was performance reviews. And we haven't rolled out performance reviews. So it's a promise, that I would like to keep this year. So, someone's gonna have to help me do that, and they're in HR. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Training programs, a lot of training programs about management training and also how to use your
Clients training.
clients training,
Harassment, sexual harassment, all that stuff they should be doing.
falling through the cracks. Yeah.
Other questions on this administrative services budget?
Oh, I asked you about HR. Is there gonna be an increase of duties with the new system once it's resolved, hopefully shortly, in finance? So that when we get to finance, we can talk about that.
There will not be any significant increase in duties. There would be, to the extent there needs to be what you mentioned with income, which should be minimum. That's one thing I can see, but significantly, no increase, no increase.
Why isn't the Paycom fee, why is it here?
Never could be any place.
As opposed to HR
It could be for finance.
or finance?
You could put it, it really doesn't matter.
This is supposed to have like nothing in it, this department. We were trying to actually take stuff out of
Well,
it.
I think the theory was, this is an area that served, so they.
The whole town.
Whole town, service that's being provided to the whole town.
Just like the mailroom services are in here because it's full
CCM.
town. CCM, yeah, okay.
Where are the CCM fees?
Last
The
line.
last line.
Education and membership, okay. Why were they moved out of here? Out of the first selectman's office?
Because the service, the whole, theory, again, this is something that services not just the first selectman's office, but the entire town.
I haven't used them at all this year.
We could theoretically go to a CCM seminar.
I should be going to, they're free.
Free time, yes, go.
All right,
I know RTM members do.
yeah,
Yeah, they do.
yeah, we've
I've done
done
it.
it. You've done it? Haven't done it.
I've used their services to get answers on stuff
Okay.
and ask them to do a study. So, I think it's worth the 30.
Yeah, I think we have to have them. All right, can we move to conservation? Okay. So conservation. 40, conservation revenue begins on page 49. Hi, Tim.
Good evening.
How are you?
Lori,
Tim
how are you?
Bishop is here. Thank you for being here, Tim. Can you start with your revenue budget and then we'll go through stuff.
Sure, thank you. So for, as you can see on, I have different page numbers. This would be 49. Some of that supplemental is also included on 47 as it relates to permit revenue. Some is mixed with inland wetlands and shellfish, but the purpose of the table on 47 was just to show general trends in department function with the permits that we issue. So on page 49, we are projecting an increase for FY 26, mostly driven or really large sources of revenue are for inland wetland permits. We have two of those called a CWC and inland wetland permits. They're both for wetlands, but one is staff level and the other is commission level. Largely driven by projects throughout town. We, over time see ups and downs depending on the market and kind of what's happening in the overall economy. I would point out that we see an increase largely due to a few things, but the fee structure that I have discussed with this board and others in the past went into effect July 1st of 23 of calendar year 23. So we're seeing some of those increases catch up in revenue of permits. As you know, you typically can't predict how revenue will be based on what people decide to do, what projects decide to move forward. But overall, we're seeing that increase due to some large projects coming through, as well as the fee structure change itself, and an increase in internal protocols where we're policing and enforcing more violations, which result in a 2 times the original permit fee, which does generate a significant more amount in revenue. Like I said, there are some bigger projects happening, things like at universities and some of the 830G type developments. Those applications are significantly larger than your average volume of residential backyard pools and decks. So those are the department's really largest revenue sources on wetlands. Shellfish is different, but like I said in that chart, it's just a show volume.
Okay, questions on revenue? Anyone? All right, thank you for that, Tim. Can you walk us through the expense budget?
Expense wise, we did have some starting at the top on page 50. As the first selectman said, my department and my salary was part of some of that study work with an increase in my salary as well as union salaries. I have 8.5 staff and 3 different unions to manage. So that's PETA, DPW, and THEA, all in my little department. Other line items worth noting, rental and storage. I believe that was a question asked through the online system. That increase of 4,000 was removed in last year's budget. Or I should say not removed, relocated. I did run into a need this year to maintain all of our meadows on open spaces town-wide, and rental of the machine to perform that work was over $5,000. So that explains the request to move the 4 back for that line item. And then below, just moving the $2,000 around from special department to postage is largely related to increased mailings. All of our violations and legal notices have to be sent certified, so they are more expensive. There's just an increase in volume of mailings in general, as well as an initiative we began recently that involves preemptive or I guess proactive initiative reaching out to new property owners in town using the town clerk's database of new home sales, and if that home has a regulated area of wetlands on it, we are sending out an information package to those homeowners, sometimes in the 20 to 30 envelope range per month versus sometimes up to 60, depending on how the market's doing. So that's an additional cost. So it's just, I think it was more appropriate to have that extra money under postage. And that's really the three main changes in the expense line. I'm happy to answer
Thank
any
you.
questions on expenses.
Question from the board? This budget? Going once.
I'm just gonna more make a comment. First of all, I never hear this budget, but I'm not doing conservation work any longer, so I had one dangling matter last year that was a carryover, barely a carryover. I'm not doing conservation work anymore, just because I'm too busy with my day job, and doing side work. So I felt I could hear this budget, which I guess will lead me to a comment. I mean, I see this must be one where you had a salary study done, showing that, you know, the salary for the director should go up by approximately $19,000. Correct?
Yeah, and
And I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with that, because I think Tim, I've dealt with other conservation directors, is I can say this now since I'm not doing conservation work, is amazing and deserves all of it. And I've been here through a history of conservation directors, and not have to hear how horrible our conservation department is over the last 20 years, and pitchforks wanting to come out, and deposits being held forever by large multi-$100,000 deposits being held for de minimis reasons, alone would make it worthwhile. So I'm glad, Tim, you see that you're gonna get the market rate you deserve on that. In regards to the rest, yes, there are some large increases, but all of them are the PETA contract and the DPW contracts. So there's really, you know, some of them are raises from 2.5 years ago, as we've discussed. So I'm not gonna really discuss that. And other than that, I have no problem with the budget. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Gerber?
Thank you, Jim.
I'm gonna say, this may be rare, but we are completely in. I
Break out the
cannot tell you, I cannot tell you how awesome this guy is. And it's not just the stuff that Jim just mentioned, but he identifies
Opportunities.
opportunities. It's just unbelievable. And, yeah, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, for everything. We're lucky to have you here. So thanks for everything, and appreciate you taking us through the budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, good night. Okay, why don't we move to?
Wait, Mr.
Ah,
I'm the open space manager though. That PETA increase, it's an average of, I mean, it's an average of like 16-17%. So what was that? How does that, was that
was that in
was
contingency
there more
last year?
than, was there a raise as well, or?
That was in contingency, and it was, yeah, I.
So what would the
Contract.
3-year average be when, like?
I believe that was a step
Some
increase.
people
What, Tim?
also have,
I believe that was a step increase for that position in PETA.
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Contractual.
Just one quick question. We got a message and an inquiry about the conservation director's compensation. And
Yes, this is
they felt
supported.
like it was too low.
Is that you?
No, it's from a Lucas Thomas.
Oh,
right, well.
Right, well, what are we gonna do? That's what he's getting.
I think that's the response.
He's the chairman and
He's
he's
the chairman of
writing
the
to,
He was
I'm just
endorsing,
curious, he wrote to us all while we were here this evening, recognizing our constituents.
I,
Oh, I thought he was
I can speak
endorsing
to
the line in there. Was he saying to raise it more? I didn't.
Well, he thinks it's
No, he said
low
he
compared to
supported it.
other directors or heads of department.
Yeah, well, there's nothing we can do about that now, so it's not our call.
Next budget, we'll get it, yeah.
He's saying it's significantly lower than other towns.
Okay.
And
Tim's,
Now, and
Tim's responsibilities are increasing, and I think we're gonna be back next year with another ask.
okay, so he got 16%. It sounds like the hardest critic over here likes it. So next year, ask for double digits.
Jeez.
So step one for Tim.
I was just pointing out the guy with us.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, let's move to the tax collector. Page 88. I'm sorry, page, I guess we can go to page, 91. All right. Good evening, Dave. Good to see you.
Good evening. And I apologize if I cut in and out. I have a lot of wind at my house here and the internet's a little choppy.
Sounds good. All right, you want to just hit
What,
the highlights?
where do we
Yeah.
want to start?
Yeah, on your expense budget, just hit any highlights that we should look at.
Sure.
Ask questions.
Okay. Yeah, so on the expense side, the main drivers here on the expense is that including myself as well as the deputy tax collector, we are both in the PETA union, which recently just had the contract settled. So, the majority of the increase on the expenditure side is these contractual wage increases, as well as just increases that come with all the costs that comes with mailing over 80,000 tax bills. So the fees of that, the printing of that, as well as the postage.
Any questions on the expense budget? All right, if no questions, maybe we can we circle back to the revenue budget then for the tax collector? I think you might have.
we're gonna come back to expense or no?
Oh, do you have questions?
I just have, just a couple, David, just because it's just a large, de minimis dollar wise, but it's a large, why is there an increase of maintenance and repair of 30.77%? Is that more equipment to repair, or is that just historic what you're seeing?
Okay, so that would be, let me go to that.
I know it's a little bit
That
amount,
is-
so it went up like $300, but it's just like a large percent, well, it went up.
Yep. So we actually had to replace one of our receipt validators.
Okay.
And so with that, we
Not a problem.
purchased a maintenance warranty.
Not a
So that's just,
Um, this question is more to David than, David, Becker or Bill. When I'm seeing postage, I just it's a general question for the whole budget. Did the average postage go up 10% by the US government? I mean, how much did that go up this year? Am I gonna be seeing increases in everything because it's just a general increase by the federal government?
No, it was pretty
I
substantial.
thought it was kind of steep.
Well, Forever Stamp's up to 73 cents, so that's,
Oh my God, really?
yeah, it's awesome.
And they're still not breaking it.
So I think you won't necessarily in every budget, and that some obviously are trying to decrease where they can, but I want to say registrar of voters was another one that's, right off the bat was an increase. Yeah.
I just don't want to ask questions about it if it's like if you think it's approximately 10% on the expense side.
So it went from 68 to 73 just for a Forever Stamp. From 24 to 20, so that would be,
9%. What, 9?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
7, 8 points.
All right. That's fine. I'm just not gonna ask you.
Pay all my bills online. I had absolutely no idea.
Okay. That's the only other question I have for you, David. Thanks very much.
Okay, let's go back. I think there's a question on the revenue side.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure we have this right. So on the revenue side, the prior year's levy, that was adjusted at the Board of Selectmen table, is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what was the reason for that change? We added 150,000 to the revenue.
There was a collection.
The collection rate,
Collection.
Budgeted, it was changed.
so we had it at 98, 96. That's been the last few years, the 9901 number. When we did the proposed budget, it was supposed to have been moved up to 9901 at the last minute. It was just, it didn't make it into the final adjustment.
But this is the prior year levy.
Are we talking the prior year? Oh, I'm sorry. We're talking the
Prior year
prior.
levy went up by
No, they're
150,000.
They're both worth 150, so sorry about that.
Okay.
Right, that's where we're, so hold on one second. Pull that back up, so I can.
I think you're on this page, correct?
Yeah,
Well,
this adjustment.
I mean,
I can speak to the
We
fact
don't have
that,
updated pages in the
Yeah.
book, so.
You're
I
talking
thought this was related to.
prior year tax interest.
The prior year levy in our book is 3.1 million and it was. I don't actually even know if this is right. Prior year collections, it says on this adjustment sheet we have that it's adjusted to 3350, but that would be a $250,000 increase and the notes say 150. So
Well, is it 150? They raised it above the 109 that they had already had in the budget book?
Jacked it up a little. It's collection rate, right?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
no,
talking.
yeah, collection rate relates to the current year. This is the line item I'm looking at is the second line called prior year levy.
What is prior year levy?
Hold on a second.
It's the delinquent taxes that we're collecting from the prior.
Yeah, you're talking collection, which is reserve, so just, your tax interest.
Yeah, but it's only showing up here as 150.
Should be.
And I guess I'm asking why it was changed to begin with.
Went up by 109 in the budget.
This whole,
Yeah, you're,
The book
you're,
was changed.
oh, that's 150.
No, I'm referring to
She's
the
referring to
Board of
the
Selectmen adjustment sheet.
Yeah.
And they said that it's adjusted to.
yeah, so just so we're clear, so in page, if you go to page 1, which is the old page, but it's where everything's all calculated out, there's a combined number that speaks to prior year tax, interest, and fees. Right? So the number is comprised of 3 different lines, which tie back to what you're looking at on page 90 in the budget book on the revenue for the tax collector. Prior year's levy, 3.1. Interest on delinquent taxes at 1.9.
That's 5,
Right,
yep.
which is 5, and then lien fees of $9,539. So there's 3 different pieces here. And the combined number, and I believe, well, the combined number comes out to that, it is less of a combined number than what last year's. If you took last year's per the budget approval, the combined amount was $5,280,027 spread across 3 different lots. It is going down this particular year because this speaks to, we've been working methodically through the very aged, some of them almost 15 years, uncollected taxes, is setting up the demand letters and kind of working through that. That list, you start with sort of the low hanging fruit. There's a dozen properties, there's 15 years worth. Then you move to the next tier, they're about 20 and it's a little bit less. So this next year proposes a lower overall amount of vehicles that kind of reel that in because it's starting to kind of bring that list closer and closer to reality. We don't have those 15-year 200,000s left per se. It's actually more and at lower amounts. But so that number has contracted some.
I mean, a little bit, but we added at the Board of Selectmen table, you added 100 and, you had 150 or 250?
So that was not that line. So I apologize. That was not that line. That line was in the reserve for uncollected taxes,
Okay.
which was at
Oh, the
9901
3350,
last
that's the
year.
reserve, that's the collection rate, okay.
That was supposed to have been set at 9901 this year. In the book,
Okay.
it's set at 9896. It was one of the last items to adjust at the end. And
Okay, so that's before we'll
Yes.
figure out that final number when we set the mill rate. So,
it's separate.
so in other words, the numbers on page 90 did not change at the Board of Selectmen table.
Correct.
And the numbers have in total declined because we're working our way through the delinquent, you're saying.
Nice.
So is it just a coincidence that the 3350 is close to the 3100? The 3.1 million?
So the 3350, if you go to this page here and you go down to the middle where it says reserve for uncollected taxes, it's 3.5 million. So if you subtract the 150 from that, which gets you to a collection rate of 9901, the 3.5 becomes 3350.
But that doesn't affect page 9.
Yeah, that doesn't affect page 90. That's the collection rate. That's the number that we'll do a final adjustment on when we set the mill rate.
And the basis of that 9901 was basically saying
Based on last year.
5 was what 91, so why change?
So last year we set it based on a 5-year average collection rate so that they kept it the same.
So that 3.5 on page 1, reserve, that's going to,
Decrease to 3350.
because we're taking it to the 99, which is what we had. I listened to, I mean, that made sense to me. Take it back up.
Question. David, how are we looking on the collection rate right now? As we stand here at the beginning of March?
Yep,
We
so
on track?
the
Are we
collection
on track
rate,
for
we're-
99.01?
we are, yes, we are on track. We're actually slightly ahead of schedule from through the end of February. If I compare to the same time last year, we're around, 77.71. We were 77.3 last year. So we're right on track, slightly ahead.
You're not concerned at all, right? Hitting
No, there's,
99.01?
I mean, there's nothing in the next 4 months that would concern.
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the tax collector? No?
I
Yes.
just we gave Timmons to Dave K. I can't pronounce his last name. Awesome. He does an awesome job, probably one of the best tax collectors in the state, treasurer. And the people like working for him.
I hope you heard that, Dave.
Yeah, it's a little
Bill says
choppy,
you're
but I think I
awesome.
got that. I got the most important part.
99 on anything, is pretty damn good.
All right, well, thank you for being here. Thanks for taking us through the budget.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, so we can move to IT. And IT is on, I believe, on page 93. Let me just, double check that. Actually, the numbers start on page 94. And we have Dave Kelly here. Hi, Dave.
Another D.
Good evening. How you doing?
Doing great.
So this is a fairly straightforward continuation maintenance of the town IT systems and software. About 2/3 of the IT budget basically pays for the let's call it the centrally shared common townwide software, computer systems, network equipment, and the like. I appreciated Lori's comments at the beginning of the meeting about how when we're setting up a budget, we are making estimates based on unknown assumptions about, in my case, what a software vendor might be charging us for something 20 months from the time I'm trying to make that estimate. So generally speaking, most software cost increases run about 3 to 5% per year. Last year, there were a few surprises and they were a bit higher than usual. But it kind of all comes out in the wash. I may have overestimated a couple, underestimated a couple. But this year, we do get a little bit of a break, as I described in my narrative, in that we have something of a warranty vacation on the town's mass storage systems. About 4 years ago, I came to the boards and suggested that rather than doing a very expensive out of budget, we call it forklift upgrade of the town's mass storage systems, that if you would add $75,000 per year to my capital outlay line, we would buy over time replacement systems that would put an end to this forklift upgrade idea, so that we would eventually be able to have the entire town technology operation operate strictly out of operating budget without having to come to you for these large, expensive upgrades. We did accomplish that over 3 years. And by doing so, we now have new mass storage systems in place, which are under prepaid warranty during this coming year. And we also were able to completely eliminate the old systems from our budget, which is why you also, at the moment, for this coming year, see a slight reduction in our maintenance and repair line. Starting next year, we will begin putting the new storage systems onto maintenance, and you will see my maintenance line begin to go up a little bit going forward. But the vendor that we have chosen sells what we call an evergreen maintenance agreement. And what that means is that going forward, as long as nothing big changes, the maintenance that we pay will entitle us to periodic equipment refreshes over time going forward. So we no longer have this rip out and replace scenario. We will be paying maintenance, and the vendor will periodically refresh the hardware as we go. It's easier for us to not have to do this rip out and replace every so many years, and it produces a smoother process going forward.
All right, questions from the board? Jim?
Hey, Dave, thanks for being here. In regard to, your capital outlay, is that the general amount you normally spend? I mean, can you direct me any changes there that we should know about?
Well, the reason that's lower, again, is because I really no longer need that $75,000 per year of mass storage equipment purchase. So
Okay.
it's been completed. So right off the bat, that's 75,000 of it right there. I think we also removed, I had in my annual capital outlay request, a $15,000 amount to upgrade, replace, install security camera systems around town.
Yes.
But at prior ARPA funding meetings, reappropriations, we allocated some ARPA money toward doing that over the next couple of years. So I also will not need it in my capital outlay. So that explains pretty much of the reduction in that line that you see this year.
Okay. And then your binding and printing number, it's not going up by a lot of dollar amounts, but it's going up 7%. Is that just cost where you're being charged, or is there more things you're gonna be doing there?
Yeah, no, that's actually adjusting to actual. So the printing, binding, photo line, that has nothing to do with the IT department. We provide toner and ink and printer parts for many printers across town.
Okay,
And I had budgeted that each year at a flat rate of about $10,000 a year, I think it's been. But finally, you know, after doing this for 8 years, the actual costs of the toner and the number of devices that we support has now pushed me a little bit over that. So I'm just adjusting it basically to my current experience.
and this is just a general question, see how it would affect your budget, but I know the first selectman, COO have been talking about merging the IT departments of the town with the BOE. Do you think that's feasible? And do you think there's money savings in that?
I don't think so.
Jim, I don't-
Yeah, I mean, yeah, self-interested, of course. But the reality is that 2/3 of my budget is, like I said, it's not, how do I say it? It's money we have to pay for the software that we use and the equipment that we have. So I don't think so, but you know, I have to let others speak to that.
Bill, did you not say that at the Board of Selectmen meetings?
I threw out a bunch of possible areas to look at, but we haven't had a chance to look at them yet. And so
What do you think there'd be savings?
why do I think we should look at it?
Why do you think there would be you said that.
I want to look at
savings.
it for savings,
Okay,
but I haven't had a chance to do it yet, and I haven't,
okay, so
another party here, so
there's another what?
there's another party that has to engage.
Oh, no, I'm gonna ask them the same question. Do they think there's?
What they'll probably say the same thing as me is we should look at everything.
Okay. Okay, so there's been no talk between any of the parties.
Like to, but there hasn't.
Okay. All right. That's all I have, Dave. I really appreciate you being here, and thanks for all you do, and thanks for finding those savings. Especially on like the warranty and all the stuff you talked about tonight. Sounds like great ideas. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you,
Nice.
Mr. Welch. Mr. Curley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kelly, looking at the capital outlay request, I compared it to what you requested last year, and you mentioned the 2 line items that were dropped off, and understand that, but the 5 line items that you do have there for things like replacement PCs or laptops, those are the same as what you had requested last year.
That's
And
correct.
if I remember correctly, during our budget vote, we actually reduced your capital outlay request by $17,000. So I guess my question tonight is around that cut, whether that did create challenges for you this year. Did that kind of put you behind? I think I was expecting you to ask for a little bit more this year as a catch up, as opposed to just repeating the request from last year.
So last year there was an adjustment to that line, earmarks for potential purchases at the first selectmen's level. And yes, it was the increase, that earmark was decreased by that $17,000. We have spent some of the remaining amount on some equipment, but no, it has not impacted my ability to maintain our laptop or PC fleets.
Dave, I apologize, but you came out a little garbled there. You said last year that 17,000 had been earmarked for what?
There was, last year, in the capital outlay line, there was actually a $30,000 increase to the department request.
Yeah.
Because the new administration had some ideas that they may, and we still may do, you know, working on some things, wanted to have some money available to make some purchases. At the Board of Finance, that was cut down. $30,000 was cut down by 17,000. But it wasn't directly out of my need to replace PCs or laptops or things like that. It was just a reduction in an increase for anticipated expenses.
Thank you.
Other questions on this budget, Jim?
Dave, when we get, when an employee has a cell phone and we get the cell phone back, which I guess is supposed to happen, which wasn't happening. They were just walking out the door with all of our stuff on it. Now that we are getting it back, does your department wipe clean the data and bring it back?
Yeah.
Was that what's happening now?
So a couple of corrections. One is that anybody that left with a phone, that phone was wiped. You know,
It was, okay. Well, that's
we're
good.
not, yeah, so accounts were withdrawn from the phones, you know, everything disappears from the phone and then we can wipe the phone. So I did hear, I watched one of the meetings where there was some discussion of that, and I want to be extremely clear about that. What somebody may have retained may have been a 4, 5, 6-year-old cell phone that they, you know, kept it in nice enough condition, but it's of no value. But what happens with it is they go into a blue recycling bucket in my office in general, and then we actually pay a company to take them and securely dispose of them.
Okay, well, you're making me feel a lot better because I think we're at the same meeting.
I was horrified at what I was hearing, but no.
Okay.
We don't operate that, no. But however, we have modified our practice. I've contacted my counterparts at police and fire that handle their cell phones, and we are simply just demanding the cell phones back regardless of their condition or whatnot.
I've got some of my faith restored, Dave. Thank you very much. And then I just want to ask you a general question. So, you know, at the company I work with, if we're going to let somebody go, we turn them off on everything before they're terminated, like right before. Like, we're always hoping that they don't see that they're not getting email. Like, yeah, I presume you guys have some type of, do you do that for the town? Like you stop access to all like software systems, all email, all that stuff?
Yes. So, yeah, there are certain, you know, certainly there are the unfortunate times when there is a forced separation. We normally are prepared to execute such disconnections and turnoffs, perhaps at a specific time of day, that kind of thing. Otherwise, you know, a vast majority of employees that leave are leaving, you know, retiring or whatever. It's no surprise. There's no concern, whatever. But we do have a detailed checklist that we go through when someone leaves to check that if they had a laptop, do we get the laptop? If they, you know, have access to Munis, are they out of Munis? If, you know, obviously email, things like that, get shut off at appropriate times. So, yes, we are careful to do that. We promise our cyber insurers that we promptly close people's accounts, and we try to be
fantastic, Dave. Thank you so much. You made me feel much better.
Good.
All right, other questions? Mr. Penley.
Just a brief question, relating to that conversation we had, there was a lot of anxiety about security of public personal information, anything that we would want to get out. What part of the budget, like, I don't know, I guess the information technology or fees and professional services related to what you would describe, I guess, as security? Is there any kind of, like, I mean, I'm sure there is, but I'm just wondering how much it's costing us to keep our data safe.
Oh, wow. It's all over the budget. So we have numerous software products, numerous hardware devices. We have training programs for our employees, because it doesn't matter how good your technical measures are. If somebody accidentally invites the vampire in, it kind of bypasses your defenses. So it's a handsome amount. I haven't broken it out. I guess I could try to allocate it out to what I would call a security product, but there's quite a bit of software and equipment in my budget that secures the town environment.
But we don't have like a third party overlooking it. We're sort of the watchdogs for ourselves. That's the idea.
Well, we employ a lot of third-party outside companies to do things like our emails, antivirus and scam control, things like that. Is AI, you know, we have something that I would say is more sophisticated than antivirus, that is artificial intelligence driven and cloud connected, and you know, so we have quite a lot of stuff inside and out that is protecting us.
All right, that's probably the extent of my ability to even talk about this, so. Questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
And I just have sort of a follow-up question to that. Do we have any, I remember several years ago or many years ago, our auditor had given us some recommendations in a letter about having a, there's probably a better word these days, but a disaster recovery plan. And well, I don't know what those are called these days, but still called disaster recovery plans. Okay.
We call them business continuity, disaster.
Business
recovery.
continuity, perfect.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I think there were questions about offsite storage or, if something were to happen to our physical building or our equipment. Where are we on that?
So it's kind of funny you mentioned this. This was a topic of discussion at today's department head meeting regarding writing a documented business continuity plans for all of our departments in case, not just technology, but my interest, of course, is, how would you operate your shop for a day or 3 days or a week if the technology, for whatever reason, due to natural or malicious damage, became unavailable for some amount of time. So much of the time since I've been with the town, and it's been a while, but I've been quietly trying to harden, strengthen, and improve our town's ability to recover from a disaster, natural or otherwise, if it occurs. When I first got here, I did not feel that we were in a good position to successfully and quickly recover from certain types of disasters. I think you'll remember early on when I got here, one of the first things I did was come to you guys and ask for money to move the data center for the town out of the basement of Sullivan Independence Hall. Because the basement is below sea level, less than a mile from the ocean. And you guys had a major storm here just a few years before that threatened the building. Because once you splash a little salt water on your IT infrastructure, it takes a very long time to recover from that. As you probably remember, we moved the data center to the police department, which is a fairly secure building, much, much safer than the basement of the hall. So over the years, I've been working on ways to help avoid a disaster, as well as improving our infrastructure, our software systems, and our backup systems to allow us to, as quickly as possible, recover from one if something occurs. You may also remember that we operate a backup data center in Trumbull, so that if something terrible did happen at the police department, we could quickly spin up our most important systems up in Trumbull and connect to them through the network. So we put quite a lot of effort. It's the kind of thing that people don't really see. It's all invisible and behind the walls. But we've put quite a lot of effort, have the right staff in place at this point to set up, maintain, and monitor these systems such that we reduce the likelihood that we'll have a problem. And I sleep much better now, knowing that we can successfully recover from one if it occurs.
All right. Okay, any other questions for Dave? All right, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thank you, Dave.
Good night.
Okay, we're gonna move to Health Department. So we can start with revenue. And that is page 149. And we have, I see Sans Cleary there. Hi, Sans.
Hello, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Welcome.
So for revenue, for all of our license and fee categories, we've gone with, as we typically do, with a 3-year average. You'll see what looks to appear to be a decline in revenue, but it's actually, if you recall, last year we added 53,000 to Miscellaneous, which isn't really revenue, was just a transfer from our seasonal flu account to cover 2 part-time positions at a private school with a child with high acuity needs. And so that did not happen this year. The student left, and so we don't have that same need. We do have a need for a 2-day part-time RN at another school. And so that, that number, if you see at the bottom, the 298 going down to 260. If you take that 50 out, that's really the change. And we'll add in 30, I think it may be $23,000 to cover that 2-day nurse at the different school from the same mechanism that we utilized last year of transferring it from seasonal flu. That's our revenue side.
Okay, let me just pause there. Does anyone have questions on revenue? Mr. Walsh.
So just, you mentioned it, Sans, Jim Walsh, how are you? Thanks for
I'm
being
doing
here.
great, Jim. How are you?
Good. So we're just not gonna be getting the excess from this miscellaneous health line anymore. It's gonna be going down to 25,000.
Yeah, and that was an accounting mechanism of just Frank had transferred it there from one of our other accounts. So it really wasn't revenue
Okay,
per se.
All right.
It's just we took money from one of our accounts and shifted it there to cover the cost of those 2 part-time nurses because as we thought it may be temporary, and so we figured let's not put it in the general fund at this point.
okay. And when we go over to revenue, we won't see those 2 part-time nurses
You will not see
on
those
the
full-time
expense side?
nurses.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we can move to expenses, which are on page 150.
So what you'll see in some of the significant items in our expenses, you will see a reduction of 1 full-time staff. Our dental hygiene program was decreasing in utilization over the years, and this year we just saw a significant drop where the 20 or so people that applied to be a part of our dental hygiene program all had dental insurance. And so we figured it's a time where we no longer need to offer in-school dental cleanings. We will still offer cleanings to those who are uninsured and dental services to those who are uninsured. We will just be doing it in a different way through notifications to the school nurses or anybody who brings it to our attention, somebody who has a dental need. But unfortunately, we had to let go our dental hygienist. So you'll see a savings there of her salary, 10-month dental hygiene position of, it was about $55,000 plus benefits, so probably $85,000 there. Some of the other significant changes in our temp payroll has been a little, I'll call squirrely over the past couple years. We've ranged from, this is substitute nurses for the schools. And so we've had a number of long-term absences and illnesses for some of the staff over the years. And so it's been kind of going up and down, ranging from 62,000 to 87,000 in the past 3 years. We looked at where we were running this year and we took a 3-year average of it and they were about the same number. So that's what we went with, is the 76,000, which is a 13,000 increase. We've eliminated $2,000 of secretarial services. That was for the Board of Condemnation. We just couldn't, we had hired people, but it's such a few hours per month that we couldn't get somebody to stay there. So we just have that done internally by our health department secretary. Fees and professionals, a lot of the increases are attributed to the PETA and the nurses union contract. Not just in the salary line items, but also in fees and professional services. Some of the benefits that they received would be attributable to the reimbursement of liability insurance would go up. That would add a couple $1,000. The medical advisor, we're going to give him a $1,000 raise. He's been with us for 15 years. He started at 10,000. He's at 11,000 now. We'd like to bring him up another 1,000. He's only had one raise. And then we've added some software related to our clinics, scheduling software that enables people to, schedule themselves for our clinics. And so that's our fees and professional goes up by about 9,600. We'll actually transfer some of that, the 1,200 for the scheduling program, to our IT line item. One of the bigger changes is the education and memberships goes up by 27,500, and that's solely attributable to the nurses collective bargaining agreement provides for each full-time nurse an $1,100 benefit of reimbursements for certifications and stipends. And so that addition is simply the $1,100 times 25 full-time nurses that we have, who the benefit applies to. And so we will, that's why we increase that line item. And so that is really the significant changes on our expense side.
Okay, questions, Ms. Ruggiero?
How come there's no increase at all in Director of Health's comp? Flat.
I need to have Lucas Thomas write me a letter.
I was gonna say, Sanj, you sounded probably pretty knowledgeable, but I don't know what's going on. You got nothing.
Do you want to- I'm not sure where is it?
Yeah, we hold those in contingency. So
We hold what?
we hold, you're talking, the non-union pieces are held in.
Well, we've seen lots of increases in department heads, but there's nothing here at all.
Like Dave, the last person was Dave, he got 3%.
Yeah, for IT.
Dave K?
Yeah, the last, Dave Kelly, the last person that was before us, and like, he was 3%. He wasn't an adjustment because of a salary study you did, but he got 3%.
Yeah,
Like,
a
seemed
lot of
like
them
a-
did. So,
Like a normal raise.
Yeah, historically, we have, or at least this was a process that I think Brenda started, was to put those in contingency, right? Rather than-
Yeah, so, yeah,
It seems inconsistent between departments.
Well, we can go back and check. The 26 number that's listed there should currently be what they're actually being. So, the 25 number, I know removed longevity out of a bunch of people, even if they were being paid, there was.
I mean, I don't think we should be trying to negotiate salaries at this table, but we're just trying to understand how the budget was put together.
I'd have to go, we'd have to go back and double check why in the IT as an example.
Yes.
Says one number and another. I can tell you that the 26 number as presented is supposed to be what they're currently being paid. And their currently being paid number is not any different than what was listed in 25. The 25, there was a amount set aside for COLA that had been held out to be done later in the year. Some contractual settlements we were waiting on, has not been done yet, so that's sitting in that contingency account. And then the 26, there's another number sitting in there, because we don't normally put that in anywhere other than contingency.
Right, so when we have our contingency discussion, we can
Walk
see,
through and get you an update on some of these nuances in the DHs. Wanna know like that.
okay.
But if you
So-
just,
Hard to get-
So
can you just look forward on the other departments? I haven't looked forward, I only looked at tonight's stuff.
Yes.
Have explanations on that, if it's.
Can I make a suggestion? Yeah, to your point, it would be, when we do the contingency discussion, you know, if you're, I think we used to have one number for department heads, but I think we should list the details so we can kind of see what's in there versus what's in these pages, because it does seem like some of them, particularly when you've given them a market increase, they are in these pages.
yeah, it's just,
You're-
doesn't seem,
But that'll actually,
Yeah, sorry.
David historically has done it.
That's right.
If they've gotten a market increase, are they also gonna get a COLA increase?
They would have gone.
It'll get up to market, not market then COLA on top.
It's market, but you have a
They may get
20
the COLA first.
Yeah, well, 25, because the market doesn't hit it. None of the market numbers they're all supposed to be from July 1 forward.
so if I'm understanding the answer that you gave, this right here, this flat, any increase, it's still being looked at is in the contingency. Some of the ones or department heads that got the market study or whatever, that's reflected, but the IT for 3% looks like it shouldn't be there. And it should have also been flat. Is that what I'm hearing?
So what they're actually being paid right now is supposed to be the 26 number. The 25 number as comprised, and we have to go back and look at some of the history, I know last year, some longevity payments, things like that were literally stripped out of what was in the budget book. Because there was a lot of discussion about that, and those were compiled. I know that while we asked this year that whatever they actually are being paid to be loaded into the 26 line.
So when we go through the contingency budget in executive session, we should get this squared away so that we can understand what's in the various pieces. Okay. I'm just gonna put a note to myself here.
So what you're saying is you think that on the IT page, the 139 is actually for 25, not 26?
Yeah, we didn't give non-union department heads that COLA. It's still sitting inside of contingency. So in reality, I believe that's the case, but I have to go back and just double check there's not a longevity or some other piece like that. That was another nuance last year. Anybody projected to get that, even though it's specific in the policy, they were stripped out. And there was a whole series of motions to deal with
Yep,
that.
yep.
So I gotta kind of go back and just look at some history and then, Tom.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. We took those out of there and we put them in contingency because you were looking at, okay.
They're currently in the policy that we have that, so that.
Okay, so why don't we can figure this out. So I think we need more data. We'll get that for the contingency discussion. All right, other questions on this budget?
And
Let's get some letters and it'd help, get some letters in.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
happy
they asking
to,
for more money for you.
I'm happy to make a suggestion. I think this would all be resolved by a very large salary increase.
So Stans, I have a question. So
Sure.
you mentioned the increase in the educational and memberships was as a result of a benefit in the new nurses contract that provides a reimbursement for certificates and stipends. Can you just, is that training required for the job function, or is this just a benefit for, I don't know what the right word is, like personal development of these professionals, or? Because it looks like we haven't had it before. So can you just help us understand that?
Yes, so both our part-time and full-time nurses are unionized, and so they all get certain levels of benefits. Previously, they had all received a $500 education benefit that over the years we didn't fund it fully. We kind of just went with the average utilization. But what happened this year is for example, we cover RN license fees. We want to ensure that they maintain their license. But they removed that. That used to be in the $500 education benefit. They removed that. They still get the $500 education benefit and added that to a separate line item that said, we'll reimburse licenses. And now we will, if you get a National School Association of School Nursing certification, that's a $500 stipend. And then an additional $250 for 2 additional certifications. So for example, we have a fantastic nurse that is a certified diabetes educator, and she provides education to the rest of our nurses on topics related to that at our our monthly staff meetings. And so the certifications definitely benefit us, and it motivates the nurses for continuous learning.
Okay, no, I get it. And I think that's great. I just was trying to distinguish between something that might be required, like certain professions require, CPE and, and there's license fees, but this is not that. This is just more of a benefit to encourage the nurses to, kind of develop their skills, et cetera.
Yep. It's
Okay,
and it's like a negotiated benefit through the
Gotcha.
collective bargaining
Okay.
agreement.
Mr. Walsh?
Sam, I think and I've said it before, I'm a big fan and ambassador of your immunization programs that you hold for flu and other things. Just give me a sense, like I come in, I give you my health card and you collect and presume whatever my insurance company pays, 25 or whatever dollars it pays for the cost of the flu vaccine plus hopefully an administration fee to you guys. Does that show up into revenue? And then the expense for that is actually in the expense side, like the cost of the flu vaccine? Is that like where the 17, where you guys have, an expense here or for, departmental supplies. I don't even know where that would be, like the cost of the flu vaccines themselves.
So the immunization program for the public that we run is a self-supporting program in a revolving account. So revenue comes in from flu shots and pneumonia shots and COVID shots and RSV shots. And then that revenue is utilized like at this time of year to purchase vaccine for next year and also to pay for the staff that staff the clinics. And so we'll have multiple clinics throughout the fall, different locations, Board of Ed building, our offices, senior center, nursing homes, things like that we've had in the past. But that all goes into that account and it basically self-supports itself.
So you don't run a profit really, it's just basically just kind of washes out pretty much?
Well, we always, we don't lose money, so we always make a little bit each year and it
Good,
builds.
okay. Good, I just was always wondering where it went, so I appreciate you telling me about the revolving fund, thank you.
Happy to.
Any other questions on the health budget? Okay, all right, thank you, Sands.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, so we're gonna move to our last department, which is finance. We are only gonna do the expense side of the budget tonight. The revenue budget we have on a different evening. It's a lot. It's more complicated and there's a lot of pieces to it. And I think we're waiting for some additional data on that. So the expense side, I believe, is on page 79.
The number's on 79.
79. All right, so Tom, turn it over to you.
Okay, well, primarily it's payroll, it's about 87, the budget. I'll speak to the headcount summary down on page 80. So we've got some moving parts here. The financial analyst, which is the last full-time position on the page, has moved to capital project, capital projects. And in part-time, the grants coordinator has also moved to capital projects.
So is that Sabrina, the financial analyst?
Yes. We have an open position, the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, which I think we're getting close to filling. That person would do not only budgets, but cash flow planning. I mean, we also, right now, we basically close the books quarterly. We want to get to a point where that is something we're doing monthly. So
I'm sorry, is that director, was that the old budget director?
that was Frank, yes. We have an open analyst position. And I know that the question has been raised about reduction in headcount with the implementation of Paycom. And I think when I started, I was told that, well, the plan is to eliminate a head. I said, well, hold on a second, I'm kind of new here. Let me make an assessment as to how we move forward. So I think net at the end of the day, we will have a reduction in headcount, between the time that we fill the open analyst position and when we figure out what to do with these other positions. So net, for the year, we're going to be down. I would say we're going to be down a head, but that's, we'll occur over the next, couple of months or so. So again, the headcount is really the major component of the expenses. The other item, in terms of professional fees and services, that's somewhat of a misnomer. That's a lot of small office services such as shredding. In terms of, the one item I think that we need to look at is educational memberships and training. I do think we need to do more in terms of training folks. But right now, it's at $7,500. But again, the payroll is the major component of the cost. Yes, sir.
It's the associate analyst, is that what you're talking about? The position for that's going to be 92,816 that's vacant, is that correct?
Yes,
That was,
Julie, that was Julie.
Juliana Santiago? That's the position that's vacant?
Right.
You're getting close to hiring someone?
Well, the director is the position that we're getting close to hiring. The director position is the one that we're getting close to hiring. The analyst position is posted. We haven't started interviewing yet.
Okay. And the part-time, the investment advisor, that was Mr. Brockfeld?
Yeah, that's probably gonna go away.
Okay, yeah, because you're not trying to renew that position, correct? Who's handling that now?
I will be working with the banks, our bankers to do that.
Okay. Are you gonna be maintaining his model? You know, he had a certain model, he went it over with us about, what we should be doing and with the banks and stuff like that.
I will work with him or someone to do that.
Okay. Is there gonna be a change to what the model is, or you?
Well, I think, the question, one of the things we haven't done is any kind of cash planning. We don't, we kind of make a guess in terms of, we know how much we have in terms of investments. But we have a lot of cash flow from funds that come in from tax revenues, and then we have significant expenditures. So we really don't have in place a system to really monitor the timing of, the cash outlays. So we're trying to put in place a cash planning process that will allow us to do that.
And what's the model for determining how much cash you need on a daily basis?
It's based on, well, it's a combination of what are the inflows? We know those are tax revenues, but what are the expenditures? We have capital projects. We don't really have a system that tells us what we're going to spend tomorrow for capital projects. The Department of Ed is the big component of expenditures. They do have a plan. They have a process for monitoring their cash. So we want to incorporate what they do with what we're planning to do. But, in terms of, what we're going to spend tomorrow for capital projects, there's nothing in place right now to enable us to do that.
Okay.
And what we've done is we've put in place a process to begin collecting information from department heads. I mean, in terms of what do they think their expenditure is going to be over the next 3 months. So that's the first step, but that's a very early step. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done to put that in place.
So can I just ask a follow-up on that?
I'm sorry.
So just as a follow-up on that, so we've got tax revenues that come in, we have non-tax revenues that come in, whatever, 25, 30 million or so of permits and things like that. And then on the expense side, so we've got
Payroll is the big cost.
We've got
That's
AP,
pretty,
and we've got capital, right?
Capital is the.
Capital's part of AP,
Yeah.
but it's not in the operating budget, right? So you're putting
Requires cash to do.
yeah, so you're putting mechanisms in place to try and forecast, to project out your cash so that you can invest excess cash.
other parties like Board of Ed.
Mr. Myers?
So I guess the cost of not having a good cash plan is that you have to keep cash, more liquid cash, which means you're not getting a higher return on that cash. Is that in a nutshell or
Well,
not?
yeah, well,
That's a big curve.
yeah, I mean, there are limits in terms of what we can invest it in. But in terms of investing short term, I mean, can we invest in a 30-day CD versus a 6-month CD? I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Because I looked at the assumptions for how you came to your interest income, and the difference between what you're investing at Fidelity versus M&T isn't that big of a difference. So it's not like you could be getting an 8% return instead of a 3% return. It's like 3.5 versus 3.
The curve was, it's inverted, right? So that's not gonna last for.
Okay.
So, Tom, so the cash management function or the cash planning, would that ultimately be part of the director of FP&A's job? Okay, and so that's why that's being elevated from just a budget director to something more than that.
Right.
And so between the director of FP&A and you will manage the town's investments, so we won't,
Plan.
okay, so,
We will do it both assistance from bankers and, you know.
Yeah.
To the extent we have volunteers, we reach out to them too. So.
Right, but we had, so before we had Mr. Brockfeld, for a brief period of time, we had Janney, and then before that, I think we were just doing it internally, right? Or who were we using? I can't remember.
We were using
Internal.
Bob Mayer.
It was
Yeah, we didn't have, yeah.
It was just internally, and it was mostly CDs and.
Exactly do it.
But who helped us with the, you know, we had all those bonds. We used to invest in munis and we had a portfolio of,
Some
I don't
guy
know,
up here who,
$100 million or something. That
was
was,
Janney the first?
Yeah.
who
no,
helped us?
before Janney, before
Who was
Janney.
Before Janney.
We had they used a Ameriprise for a while. I mean, they had different accounts.
Okay, but are we looking to get another outside investment advisor or no?
At this point, no, but I'm open to suggestions if you have thoughts that.
The idea was that you were, took whatever you had in Janney, you were letting what you thought you were gonna loss on bleed out, and then everything else was just, you're just buying treasuries with.
Yeah, he was doing a laddered T-bill.
Before Tom got here, now.
Yeah, what's the issue? I mean, there's so
So-
little interest rate risk on it, like.
Yes, so the issue, and this is changing because of Tom, he's hiring somebody. You know, yeah, at a certain time, you'd made more money in sitting in a cash deposit. That's the way the yield curve, it was inverted. So, right, so it didn't really matter if you kept it in cash, but of course, that's just a terrible strategy. So what Ken did was, you know, he came in and he looked at, well, how much we had, you know, all this cash in uninsured deposits. So he put them into segregated accounts and set up, you know, laddered treasury portfolio with some in.
I guess I'm just saying, like, if you buy a 3-month T-bill, you're getting annualized 4% more.
Right.
That's separate from when the cash flows hit your department, when the
We
liquidity
can go
comes
out,
with
we can
with
go
your
out.
company, because you can sell it and you're not, I mean.
Yeah, you can
minimal.
sell it and the real risk is, you know, the change in price. So if rates go up and you're long and, you know, longer than you want to be, you might take a little.
But at such short duration, it's
Right.
almost negligible.
Right, we can go out 5 years.
Mr. Zero?
Just want to follow up quickly to make sure I understood what you said. The director of FP&A was the old Frank role, and that's the one you're close to hiring someone on.
We believe so, yes.
145, is that like the going market rate? feel like
That was kind of my best guess in terms of looking at positions that I saw that are open.
And then the associate analyst, that role, that's 92,816, you said is vacant?
Yes.
And then the financial analyst is also vacant and posted.
No, the financial analyst has been moved to capital projects.
Okay, and then
That's
also the
Sabrina
grant
doing all
person has
those
been moved.
sheets for us. All our capital plan, our waterfall, all that, Sabrina, like WPCA plan.
I had that circled as the financial analyst and the part-time grant going to the projects team. But then I thought I heard you say something different to Jim, so it was just my bad. Thank you, that's helpful.
So basically, Tom, you and the Director of Financial Planning and Analysis will be the treasury function of the town.
Right. There is a quote unquote treasurer. But in terms of, yes, the cash management, yes.
It's in the charter.
Yes.
Well, not the way David Cantor treats it. He treats it much more seriously.
Okay.
He's an investment.
Okay.
And again, he's someone we would confer with, you know, in terms of cash planning.
Okay. And then this Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, then you mean a non-union position?
That is the intent, yes.
All right. You just gonna feel okay about that?
It's been,
Yeah, HR has been involved with this.
Discuss strategy at open public meeting.
They're also gonna be the same person that does the budgets,
Well, they're doing other things.
but they're gonna do the budgets.
This is a.
Act as the budget director
And this role has been expanded from what it was before.
Okay. But one of their
One of the-
main
one
functions
of the-
would be to do the
One of the
budget
responsibilities
season.
would be the budget, yes.
So that we didn't have to have a budget director who was only busy for 4 months a year. I think we had at one point.
Yeah.
That was before you. Okay. And then why did the education and memberships go down by $2,500? He was using it?
Yeah, it's the running rate, but again, as I said, that's an area I think as we go forward, we should look at increasing. There's no proposal to do that now, but I do think we need to get people to focus more on professional development.
The financial analyst and the part-time grant coordinator, are they still in your department or they moved out of your department?
Sabrina's still in my department. The grant writer has left the company.
So Sabrina will switch over beginning of fiscal year. Yeah, or whatever.
Seems like we got a lot of stuff from Sabrina, I have to say. Like,
She's very
a lot
productive.
of.
I mean, this is what she's been doing, so it's just
Yeah.
formalizing.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
And so one last question. So the grant coordinator, and I realize that's in ops, but is that budgeted as full-time in ops?
Affirmative.
Yes, okay, thanks. Because the person we had briefly, we hired as a full-time, because I mean, we've heard a lot how important that's gonna be going forward and, okay,
The what person?
the grant coordinator.
Okay.
All right, any other questions on finance?
Are we hiring a new risk manager slash at all, or somebody for risk management?
It's in ops, so we'll get to that.
It's in ops? What ops?
Operations.
Operations department, which is another night.
Okay.
Speaking of that, and I know this is off topic, but when we do get to the ops department and the risk manager, I was gonna put this in the spreadsheet, but be helpful to see some kind of salary benchmark. It looked very low. Like I was shocked that so anyway, not for now, but it's not in this agenda, but
We can discuss
okay, that'd be
the
good.
logic on that, but also.
Okay, go. All right, any other questions for tonight? Okay, take a motion to adjourn. 1, 2.
Everyone.
Everyone.
No,